Good evening, everyone, at 6 p.m, and we resume the meeting from last night. I welcome all those present in the public gallery, those watching on live stream, councillors and all staff. Item 2 is attendance and apologies. Have an apology from Councillor Jones, and I believe all other councillors are present in the building. On to the next item. We left on the meeting last night on item 5.4. You should all have a sheet on your table in front of you, councillors, headed item 5.4 Midland Men's Shed. I'll just give you a moment to read it if you hadn't had the opportunity already. Have you got a copy, Councillor Richardson? Thank you. So, whilst you're looking at information, in order to make a determination on item 5.4, there's a recommended process, and I'm seeking if you have a motion, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
I move that Council resolves by absolute majority to suspend clause 410 and 8.4 of the Meeting Procedure Local Law 2019 in accordance with clause 11.1 to allow the Council to A, reopen the consideration debate of item 5.4 and B, introduce any motion relevant to the item as if it's the first time this item is being considered by the Council. And Mr Mayor, the reason for this motion is that the previous debate on this item did not result in a Council resolution. Council should make a decision on this item and it's been included within the agenda.
Thank you. You're seconding that motion, Councillor Kiley. Thank you. I'm just going to pause for a second because the Deputy Mayor just left to allow another councillor to get into the back door because it's after 6 p.m. and their pass isn't working. So I think it's only fair that all councillors should be in the room when we decide this issue. Thank you. So once Councillor Congdon and McCulloch enter the chamber, I'll just bring them up to speed because they haven't had the opportunity of hearing your remarks, Councillor Bowman. This being a procedural motion, there's you need to provide the reason, which you have, for the motion, but there's no discussion or no debate. And if you indulge me, Councillor Bowman, for the fairness to both Councillor Congdon and Councillor McCulloch, I might ask you to read that item again. Thank you.
Not a problem, Mr Mayor. So I'm moving that Council resolves by absolute majority to suspend clause 410 and 8.4 of the Meeting Procedure Local Law 2019 in accordance with clause 11.1 to allow the Council to A, reopen the consideration and debate of item 5.4 and B, introduce any motion relevant to the item as if this is the first time this item is being considered by the Council. And as said before, Mr Mayor, the reason for this motion is that previous debate on this item did not result in a Council resolution. Council should make a decision on this item as it has been included within the agenda.
Thank you, and that motion was seconded by Councillor Kiley. I'm now going to put that motion. All those in favour?
Question.
Question, Councillor Johnson.
Does 7.21 have any bearing on this?
7.21.
7.2. Moving a procedural motion, with the exception of clause 7.1h, a member who has moved, seconded or spoken for or against a motion cannot move a procedural motion. Let's hope not.
Well, the motion that we're talking about is to suspend clause 410 and 8.4 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law, so we can. So once I put that to the vote, we'll be out of standing orders and meeting procedures to discuss the issue. So I'm now going to put the vote. Those in favour? It's unanimous other than Councillor Catalano, so the motion is passed. I now require a councillor. Does any councillor have a motion on item 5.4? If there's Councillor Kiley, what is your motion? Thank
I'll
you.
move the officer's recommendation that was previously supplied in the agenda, Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Podovnik. Is there anyone against?
Yes, I'm against.
Do you wish to debate it, Councillor Catalano?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kiley, if you could open the debate, please.
No, I think we said enough last night. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Podovnik, would you like to speak to the
I've
item?
got nothing more to add to what I already said last night.
Thank you. Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you. I don't see why this has to be brought back again. There might be some argument about the men's shed and their grants, but there's always an extension that can be had on most grants. I know that from personal experience. And I just think that, this is a fairly bad outcome for the environmental values of the City of Swan. I also think that it's actually an affront to traditional owners because effectively we're agreeing to chop down a tree and ask them what they think about it. And if someone was going to knock down my house and made a decision to knock down my house or take away something that's sacred to me, and they said, well, we're going to take it, but I tell you what, we'll consult with you about it, I think it might even be slightly worse than actually just doing the deed and not even bothering to tell me about it. So I think, unfortunately, this is a fairly sad outcome for all of us, and I want to protest about that by opposing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any speakers for the motion? Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think we discussed the trees and the birds at some length last time, but we're now in a slightly different position procedurally. It's my view that we need to look again at the location of the proposed shed for all the reasons discussed yesterday, and in particular the fact, having looked at the plan in more detail, it's very clear that if the shipping containers are moved to somewhere else and there are other places to put them, then the shed extension can be placed where the shipping containers are, and I'm pretty certain we'll find that the bushfire attack level is satisfied. So, councillors, what I'd like you to do is this. I think something a bit more sensible than just proceeding with the officer's recommendation. We need to look at this again. I know we've heard all the arguments about we've looked at it a lot. But I think what we need to do is just ask one more time. Let's just ask this one simple question: Can we put the extension to the men's shed where the shipping containers are, and put the shipping containers somewhere else to be determined? That's the question that needs to be asked, and I think that's really what was being asked by the motion previously. So I'm foreshadowing a deferment. So if this officer's recommendation is lost, I'm foreshadowing a deferment motion until February in order to allow the men's shedders to get together with their architect or whoever and determine whether the shed extension can be put somewhere else, which is where the shipping containers are. That would be my motion. So, councillors, for that reason, because deferment on this occasion is better, please vote against the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for the motion?
I know I said I wasn't going to speak, but can I waive my right to speak?
Yes, but I'll just mention now, all seconders of motion can reserve their right to speak later. I think I'll allow that. It's only something new that we've been doing for the last month. So if you wish to speak now, Councillor Podovnik, I'll allow that. Thank you.
Just very quickly, in response to Councillor Johnson, again, I just want to reiterate that the men's shed have done everything they can to save the trees, and they're just redesigning this as best they can, and they just can't design around this one tree. So I put a phone call into them this morning. I spoke to a couple of them in response to our discussions last night, really because I wanted to know, is it possible for us to redesign this to save the tree? And they've confirmed that every design option has been considered. The design changes discussed last night will not give them what they need. That's what they've confirmed to me this morning. They did have a number of specific requirements that needed to be met. And, you know, so the idea that we can simply shift, move or redesign the extension easily is just not true. They have given this a lot of thought. Again, it's not a terrific outcome, but I really think we need to listen to them, and I think we need to ask them, give them what they're asking for.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Do you wish to exercise your right of reply, Councillor Kiley? No. So the motion is on the board above me, councillors. I'm now going to put that to the vote. Those in favour? I have Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Parry, myself, Councillor Congdon, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Podovnik and Councillor Bowman. The motion is passed. Those against were Councillor Richardson, Councillor Knight, Councillor Catalano and Councillor Johnson and Councillor Howlett. Thank you. Having dealt with item 5.4, councillors, I need a resolution that we now go back to our normal meeting procedures by reinstating clauses 4.10 and 8.4 of the meeting procedures local law. Moved Councillor Parry, seconded Councillor Zanino. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried. And we're now on to item 5.6, councillors. It's the Woodbridge Creek footbridge, and it's on page 686. And Councillor Johnson, you have a motion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. My alternate motion is that Council resolve to note that the Vivash and Woodbridge community consider the footbridge has heritage, aesthetic and environmental value and is worth retaining as it provides a connection to the land's past use as a dairy farm. The routine inspection report from November 2019 did not say the bridge was unsafe. It said that maintenance was required. 2, request the CEO report to a future meeting of Council on approaches to preserve the bridge, including information on the origin, age, history and design of the footbridge, if this can be obtained, the environmental value of the land surrounding the footbridge, methods to preserve the footbridge, including corrosion prevention coatings, galvanic protection of the steel, methods to make the handrails safe while retaining as much of the appearance as possible, safety standards that should apply to the footbridge, work recommended on the bridge, a future maintenance schedule for the bridge, and 3, record the reason for changing the officer recommendation is that the Woodbridge and Vivash community wish to retain the footbridge for its heritage, aesthetic and environmental value, and 2, the bridge was not assessed as unsafe, it was assessed as in need of maintenance.
Thank you. Before I call for a seconder, Councillor Johnson, I'd just like to know, in your point 1, you've got notes. I don't believe that should form part of the council resolution, but I'd happy to include those paragraphs A and B at the bottom as footnotes or advisory notes. Would you be acceptable to that?
I can, but I don't see why not. We've done this before. I mean, it's good practice to have a preamble.
Well,
and then the instruction,
no, it's not good practice to have a preamble in motions coming before council. But what I'd suggest, and I'll put it to the vote if I have to, I believe that your 1, A and B should be at the bottom after your reasons for changing the officer recommendation as advice notes. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. It's up to you.
Where does it say in here?
I'm just suggesting it to you. Thank you.
I'm happy with it as it is. I wouldn't have written it like that if it wasn't correct.
Thank you.
I've not had any feedback, and it's not something you can put to the vote because it's my motion.
I'll call for a seconder to the motion. Councillor Howlett. Is there anyone against? There is. You wish to debate it? Yes. Okay. Councillor Johnson, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this bridge is a delightful reminder of the dairy farm that used to be here in Vivash. It's well loved by the local community. It helps people connect with the environment and the nature of Blackadder Creek. You've seen the photos of the sacred kingfishers that nest in the tree. You saw them at the agenda forum. Councillors, I did consider a motion to do more consultation with the Vivash community, but I thought that Miss Melinda Brackley's written deputation was almost certainly representative of the views of Vivash people. And I think it was clear from that the local residents would like the city to look for ways to preserve this bridge. Just because a bridge is old and a bit rusty does not mean it's unsafe and needs to be replaced. The November 2019 regular maintenance report did not say the bridge was unsafe. It just said that it needed maintenance. The problem the city has, as Mr Covington said, is that the city does not have the design for the bridge, so it does not know its original design load and how that design load may have been impacted by reduction in the steel beam cross-section through corrosion. And if you reduce the width of the cross-section, you're going to make, it's got less steel, so therefore it's going to be weaker. But one thing's for sure, if anyone has seen this bridge, is this bridge was not designed as a footbridge to carry pedestrians. It was certainly able to carry 2,000 kilogram cows, and several of them of that, as you've all seen, cows walking a line when they go to milking. And it's wide enough to carry vehicles, so I believe it was some kind of vehicle bridge, and it was possibly some kind of military vehicle bridge, so probably designed to carry really heavy vehicles. What I believe we need is a report to assess the current load capacity of the bridge and how it can be maintained through anti-corrosion coating, such as your good old coal galv or any other kind of protection, and galvanic protection, which using a sacrificial anode so that the anode decays instead of the steel, just as any other large steel structure would be protected. So, councillors, all large steel structures will rust away if they're not protected, and they're usually protected through a combination of coatings, cathodic protection through anodes, regular inspection, understanding of the design, and understanding of the load and the safety factor involved. So steel structures can last, large steel structures can last for many years. You only have to think, I don't need to give you any examples, if you just cast your mind around the things that you see around you see many steel structures. This one just hasn't been subject to regular maintenance and protection. So the report will address any safety concerns that council may have, and I'm sure the staff will be able to provide us with information on insurance as well. So my proposal is we commission a report into approaching to preserve this bridge for the future to remind us of the past. Of course, councillors, it may well be that the report says, sorry, it's too corroded, it's not safe, in which case it'll have to be removed and replaced. But it's my view, and I do have a degree in civil engineering, that it's not that far gone. I couldn't see anything really wrong with it. When I jumped up and down on it, it didn't move at all. And that's usually a sign that a structure is meeting its load-bearing requirements well within the safety factors that are appropriate to a bridge of this nature. So, councillors, I'm not the expert. I suggest we get an expert to actually look at this, because I do believe the bridge can be saved and it's what the local community wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard is the seconder.
Thank you. This bridge provides an inherent and sentimental value to the residents of both the local Midland and Vivesh community. It is a low-use bridge that creates a passive passing through the Blackadder wetlands. Part of the value this bridge provides is in how it sits in the natural environment, how it blends and it melds with the trees, the hollows, the bird life, the insects and the waterway it spans. Of the submissions that were received, really only one of them supported the bridge being replaced. The others mention pathways to and from the bridge, and two actually objected to the bridge being replaced. I think that Councillor Johnson's motion is what we should adopt in the first instance, and if we do want to develop an overall plan for this area that does incorporate what the submissions included, which was pathways to and from the bridge, connecting it more greatly to the suburbs that it sort of sits in between, and if it wants lighting, then we need to create an overall plan for that, in which case we can look at redoing the bridge. It is not... whilst it might be listed as, not in accordance with Australian standards, and it might be listed as being in poor condition, the bridge is, I would believe, not unsafe, as it hasn't been mentioned as unsafe in the engineering report. And I think we should leave it for the moment, address what Councillor Johnson's motion says, and that is to give it the fixing and repairs that it needs, and then if we are going to look at an overall plan, then we can consider a new bridge at some other point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. One of the things that worries me about this bridge is that you have to look at the whole of life of any structure that you utilise within the system, and frankly, you get to a point where you do maintenance on things. Mr. Coaten's very good at explaining this to us, is that with roads as an example, bridges, the same thing. You do your maintenance along the way, and then you get to a point where you've held it off as long as you can, and you effectively fall off a cliff or you replace it. And that's the process we go through. So we're at a point now where the Band-Aid solution becomes an expensive solution, in fact a very expensive solution. I don't know if you have any idea about cathodic protection, but I certainly do. I've had a lot to do with that over the years. And the bottom line is it's expensive. You've got to feed power into it. You've got to have all of those things available. The bottom line is that you've got a rising cost just to maintain something that should already be replaced. So cathodic protection is part of a Band-Aid solution. It simply means that you have to pour money into it to get a little bit, perhaps, of future life. And frankly, we're at a point now where you say, OK, you replace it because you're not prepared to spend a pile of money on something that isn't worth spending a pile of money on. Experts have assessed this, and they've said that we've reached that point where we should be doing some work, and staff have put this up to us to deal with that. Now, the point about it being a heritage structure, I have a problem with that. I don't believe it's listed. And from my perspective, an old World War II bridge that was probably bought for $10 from the disposal store that could be damaged, could be in any way an unsafe structure if you drove a truck over it, let alone some people walking over it. But the point is we don't really know the condition of that structure. So what is the viable life? Well, it may in fact last another 50 years without even spending all that money on cathodic and action and other things. But as you know, we're very risk averse in this city, at least ways our engineering department is, and they want to make sure that we have things safe for our community at a cost our community can afford. And I want to emphasise that cost that we can afford. So the point is we replace our structures when we replace them when they've reached end of life. And that's what we've been asked to do, and I believe that's what we should do, rather than throw good money after bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Question, I'll take Councillor Knight first. I saw his hand before I heard your voice, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Knight, you have a question? Oh, okay.
Speaking for.
Okay, I'll take the question first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question to staff. It says in the details that a visual inspection has been completed. Yes, there was some severely corroded and damaged areas, but Councillor Henderson mentioned that experts had inspected the bridge. Could you advise which experts inspected the bridge, please?
Mr Coaten.
There was a consulting structural engineer undertook the visual inspection that's referred to.
Was there another question? Councillor Catalano.
It was a visual inspection. They didn't do any load bearing or any other kind of inspection.
That's correct. It was a visual inspection.
Okay, and that's the one that you refer to in the report.
That's correct.
That's the expert.
Yes, that's
correct.
The
visual. So in fact, there's nothing further than what's in the report. Thank you.
Then a visual inspection by a qualified person. Councillor Knight, you wish to speak to the item? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, Councillor Henderson just said about the lifespan of the bridge. I don't know if you're aware that in Perth we've got bridges that have rivets in them on the railways, and rivets haven't been used since the Titanic. So I don't see that this bridge, for its use where it is, with so few people that are using it, I don't see that the money that we're paying for this really justifies it to repair it. Isn't it a better option to look at repairing the handrails and maybe putting some signs up that enter at your own risk or use at your own risk? And we can't do that? All right, okay, strike that. Yeah, look, I've had a look at the bridge as well. I'm not an engineer, but I mean, structurally, it seems to be okay. Steel is incredibly strong, and it's only foot traffic. So I just don't see that we need to really be going overboard with this. Handrails, maybe a piece of flat steel welded on top would be enough. Cathartic, as far as the protecting the steel, zinc anodes, that's what we use on yachts, and that is just a sacrificial anode. So some of those could be bolted on somewhere. So, yeah, I think, can we look at other options before we get rid of this bridge and destroy the trees that inevitably will...
Well, point of order, Councillor Knight, if you read the report, it's anticipated that no trees will be removed. Some may be trimmed, but none removed.
Okay, well, a significant limb will be trimmed off one of those trees down there as it's going through one of the spas. But, so yeah, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the question, Councillor Catalano.
Just with regards to digging out, because I mean, obviously that steel bridge is sitting on, some kind of parapet either side, and when you dig out those, those kind of structures that are holding that steel bridge in place, how do you know that you're not going to be damaging any of the vegetation, like in terms of the sedges and the rushes and even the trees that are close by to it? How do you know that that's not going to happen?
Mr Coaten.
The contractor will be required to put in place a construction management plan that, among other things, will address environmental issues in relation to the removal as well as the installation.
And won't that push the cost of the project up to be going through all this?
That is a requirement that they provide a construction management plan with the work.
Okay, and how will we know if the management plan actually ends up entailing that there's going to be vegetation removed in contradiction to what we're reading in the report tonight?
Well, that will be reviewed by staff before the work commences and will be supervised during construction.
So council won't know until we get some complaints, or councillors won't know until we get complaints from residents that there's been digging of vegetation?
Well, it's not intended that the construction management plan would come back to council, no.
Okay, so the other thing is, just in terms of that digging, I mean, at what point are we going to, if we're going to approve this bridge replacement tonight, once again, at what point are we going to get the Section 18? And that's again the consultation about the digging of the creek bed.
As I explained in my email last week, that a Section 18 has been approved for the work in this area.
That's not what I've been told by the traditional owners to the Blackadder Creek. They've advised me that they haven't been consulted on it, on this plan. I think they put that in a letter as well that I distributed to staff.
I've got no intention of entering debate, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bowden, you have a question, or thank you, question?
Mr Mayor, through you, first question, LGIS, the city's insurers, have they expressed any concerns?
The matter hasn't been raised with them.
Okay. And the anticipated time or work required to do this report, roughly?
We haven't estimated how long that would be. We'd get a consultant in to do it, so I don't have an estimate of it.
Okay. Mr Mayor, can I request that recommendation 1 gets put separately to 2 and 3 when it gets time?
So you're moving an amendment?
So, Mr Mayor, just for when it comes to voting, we'd vote on 1 first and then we'd vote on 2 and 3 combined.
To separate items 1 from items 2 and 3. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kiley. Don't need it. Yeah, I'm just advised that item 1 doesn't actually do anything to the motion. It's just a note, and that's why I suggested at the beginning of the item that it should be put to the end under the reasons as a footnote, Councillor Bowman. So do you wish to proceed?
Well, Mr Mayor, I won't be voting in favour of it if I'm voting for 1, 2 and 3, but I would be voting in favour if I'm voting for 2 and 3.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, do you wish to reconsider?
Question why? What's wrong with 1?
Well,
it has no effect.
Well, I can give a reason. You're saying that we don't know the violation with which committee consider the footbridge as a whole. We have our deputations, but we don't know as a whole.
Thank you. I'm going to put the motion at, or the amendment. I'm confused whether it's an amendment or a motion.
Mr Mayor, it's not an amendment. The councillors just asked to vote separately on recommendation.
So I'll put them separately.
Yep.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers to the motion, councillors, for or against?
Yes, I do.
I saw Councillor Kiley's hands first. Thank you.
Councillors, I'll be supporting point 2 and 3. This is only for a report. Let's get this done and see what can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Catalano, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. And I'm speaking in support of it. Actually, the Blackadder Catchment Group first went down to this area back in early 2000s, and it was absolutely and utterly devoid of vegetation, bar that big old Rooters that has got the hollow in it that the kingfisher lives in. And it had been, cows had been in it. The whole thing was completely without vegetation. And the Blackadder Catchment Group recognised that, well, it was actually a registered Aboriginal site at that time, and they recognised the importance of that waterway for the Swan River because it filters water and nutrients going into the Swan River, and thereby reducing the risk of algal bloom, which is all part of the Swan River Trust's kind of mandate in those days. The Blackadder Catchment Group recognised that it was a very important area to revegetate, and that is exactly what they did. And in fact, when you look at these pictures on the following pages, that aesthetic and that ambience and that beauty and natural beauty actually is a result of the efforts of nearly 20 years of volunteer work. And I just think that it's an absolute slap in the face to volunteers who have tirelessly given decades of work to maintaining waterways and reserves in Midland to now rip up or potentially rip up their work.
Sorry, Councillor Catalano, we're talking about the
there is
replacement
the
of the
issue.
footbridge.
Yes, there is the
Not
issue
about
that
waterways and trees,
when this bridge is removed, that there is a potential that their work will be damaged, and that the first thing they'll find out about that is when they go for a walk down there and find that the work, the vegetation that they've put in, will be ripped up, because we won't know as councillors, no one will tell us until we get the complaints. So once again, we're, asking the community now to accept something they don't want, because the bridge is fully functional. It just needs to have those repairs done to it. And I want to say one other thing in terms of replacement footbridges. I suppose it was almost 15 years ago, it might have been more, that a wooden bridge was replaced down over at the Riverside Park, which actually is where the sort of channel for the Blackadder Creek now comes out at the Swan River, right at the Swan River, and that was replaced. And there was this very grand bridge put in and cost quite a lot of money. It was actually a very grand bridge that was put in. It cost quite a lot of money. Thank you for, thank you for that. Right, okay. It's actually a serious matter. I'm sure if it was affecting your community, you'd be feeling the same. Okay, so this very grand bridge was put in with timber that was removed from the bridge, the New Swan Bridge, and it was all very elaborate. But only just in the last couple of years, I've had to alert staff to the fact that the white ants had got into it.
Yeah,
So
1 minute
sometimes,
left, thank you.
Thank you. Sometimes some of these replacements are counterproductive, and I would suggest that replacing this structure with some kind of fiberglass, plastic structure is actually going to be counterproductive in the long run and is going to cost us money. So once again, we're at the point of, do we disturb what's there, create a mess, expect volunteers to come along and clean it up, and in a few years' time still have a structure that needs to be again replaced. And I suggest that we don't, and that we just manage with what we've got. It's only a footbridge. It's very aesthetically pleasing down there. It's part of the ambience of it, and in fact it's probably the nicest part on the whole of the riverside.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano.
Thank
That's
you.
your 5 minutes. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Then before I hand back to you, Councillor Johnson, I'm going to enter the debate. Councillor Congdon, if you can take over. There's the stopwatch. Councillors, I support the officer's recommendation, and I don't support the motion before us calling for a report. And I see this as a real risk in terms of liability to the city. We've heard from Councillor Knight saying steel is very strong. Those may remember there's actually a ship broke in half off our WA coast a number of years ago, and the report was it seemed to be being held together by the paint that had been continually put over. I'd like to, in particular, draw your attention to the top paragraph on page 687, where it said 6 submissions were received about the replacement of the bridge. 4 of those submissions were in support of replacing it. The 2 that were against. One said that they thought that there should be also connecting footpaths at either end with lighting, and there's no such work proposed. And that was one of the reasons for their objection. And the other said that there was objected on the basis there's going to be trees removed, and we've heard that there's no intention to remove any trees, though some trees may be trimmed. Getting back to the liability issues, if I can draw your attention to the photographs on page 692, and you don't have to be an engineer. If you look at the wooden post, the largest item in the photograph, go down to the base of it and then travel along about 2 inches in the photograph, you'll see large holes in the steel structures. No amount of galvanising anode will fix that up. The cancer or rust has eaten holes through one of the main supporting beams underneath. And you may well remember, it was only a few years ago, where a military bridge at Rottnest Barracks actually collapsed, and that was a lot newer and a lot better condition than this bridge. So I think we have a responsibility to make sure that residents using this bridge do not fall foul of it failing one day just to keep the aesthetics. Yes, it's been a good bridge, it served its purpose, but when our asset replacement executive tells us we should be replacing this asset, we'll be left liable if we don't do it. If we just do a patch-up job and something happens in 5 or 10 years' time, whoever may be injured would want to sue the city because we knew about it, we knew the risk, and we ignored it. So I'll now hand back to you. Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for your right to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We're not ignoring the risk. That's why we're asking for a report. So it's not a patch-up job. It's actually an engineering analysis of the bridge to determine whether it is still safe and it can be saved. A visual engineering inspection. Mr Mayor, you're not qualified. I know you're not an engineer. I might be a chartered engineer and have a civil engineering degree, but that doesn't qualify me either. It needs to be somebody with expertise in looking at corrosion, and I don't have any such expertise. It's true there are large holes in the bridges, but they were designed into it. Those are the holes in the trusses. They're meant to be there. It's not a boat, it's a bridge. So it's not held together by paint because there's no paint on it. It's just held together by rust at the moment. And until we get a report, we won't know what's holding it up. Public liability. Okay, so in order to have public liability, you've got to have a risk. You've got to have a potential tort. So apparently there is a tort of public liability, which astounded me when I discovered it. But that's why you have expert reports from engineers who say it's either safe or it's not safe. And when it comes to determining if it's safe, let me just refer to the report that we have. It says maintenance required. It doesn't say demolish bridge, it is unsafe. It says investigate extent of corrosion to truss and buckling to bottom chord members. That's what it says to do. And it says handrails are damaged and no longer effective, need replacing. It doesn't say damage beyond repair, get rid of it immediately. It doesn't say this. It doesn't say tiger tape it off. It doesn't say put up a sign. It just says maintain it, which is what I'm asking for. So, moving on. Part one, the Woodbridge and Vivash community, I do believe support this because I believe that Miss Melinda Brackley is extremely representative of the area, and even if you door knocked every house in Vivash, you'd never get everybody to answer the door and tell you that they supported it, but I believe they do. Trees will be removed. One tree will be removed because, as you can see in the picture, there's a tree growing through one of the trusses. This is not just about engineering; it's about aesthetics and heritage. And as for cost, look, this is one of a kind. We don't have hundreds of these kinds of twee heritage rusty old bridges all over the city. So far as I know, there's only one. So as we're planning to spend money on it anyway, we can spend a small amount of money just doing an engineering assessment. Finally, sacrificial anodes. They can be passive. They don't have to be active. You don't have to put a current through it. You can have a passive sacrificial anode. So you just install it with a diode and it does its job. Is it at the end of its life? Well, we won't know until we get the engineering report. That's what we want. So we know it can be done. We know it's what the community want. We need to maintain our environment. And I forgot to mention the sacred kingfishers that might be disturbed by this, but I never mentioned them in the debate, so I shouldn't really bring them in. So councillors, there's a whole load of reasons why we should just get this report and decide, is it safe or is it not safe? Can we save it? Can we not? I don't know. It looks savable to me. So, councillors, let's get that report and let's do this in a professional manner. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now putting the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Oh, sorry. I don't think the motion to split it.
No, the councillors just requested it so you can call one. And
Okay,
then you can call
so
2 and 3.
sorry. We're going to move item 1 first. Those in favour of item 1? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 being Councillor Predovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. That motion is lost. That part of the motion is lost. Now moving part 2 and 3. Those in favour? I have Councillor Bowman, Councillor Predovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Richardson. Points 2 and 3 are passed. Thank you. That moves us on to the next item. Thank you, councillors. Is item 5.7. It's proposed works, Kings Meadows foreshore in Guildford, and it's on page 695. Thank you, Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. My motion is that the council resolve to defer consideration of this matter until the 6th of April 2022 ordinary meeting of council. 1. Number 2. request the CEO schedule an on-site meeting in early 2022, inviting councillors and relevant officers to discuss alternative natural and environmental solutions to address the issue of riverbank undercut. And 3, the reason for changing the officer's recommendation is to allow time for the on-site meeting as per Part 2 to occur. Thank you.
You're seconding that, Councillor Kiley. And I'll just draw to your attention, the correct motion is on the whiteboard. On the running sheet in front of you, in the second paragraph, you may have 2020. That's a typographical error. I've got a mover in Councillor Knight, seconder in Councillor Kiley. Is there anyone against? You're against, Councillor Johnson? You wish to debate it?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Knight, you'll have 5 minutes to enter the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, so the reason for this deferral is I'd like to see this deferred as a part of a much bigger riverbank erosion problem that we need to talk about. I'd like Council to meet with traditional owners to consult further. Because upstream in Vivash there are some very serious undercutting causing trees to fall into the river. And we need a program to identify and remediate all these areas of the river in our jurisdiction and hopefully look for state funding to help us to do that. Work did begin upstream in the Reg Bond Park and the Swan River foreshore in a few spots, which seems to be very successful, but has since come to a halt. Staff have suggested 3 options for Council to consider. The officer's preferred recommendation is for sheet piling and rock revetments, which is on page 702. I would suggest that this option, which is the most expensive at $1 million, not be adopted. Surely in any remedial work that we do, we want the area to be as natural and maintenance-free as possible going forward. This increases the ombudsman of the area and will save the city money in the long term. I would also object to this because it's more man-made materials that have to go into the river, more maintenance, and eventually it have to be removed and go to landfill. Avoidance of such materials should be high on the priority list. At the moment, the timber wall, whilst it's damaged, is still breaking up the boat wash, and I'd like to see a combination of large tree trunks, rocks of varying sizes, and a revegetation program that will grow over time and stabilise the riverbank. This is more in line with option 2, which is the managed retreat, which also attracts funding from the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions. The timber wall could be incorporated into the rock revetment where it will eventually break down, so money wouldn't need to be spent on removing it or disposing of it. If access to the river for fishing or boating is required, then perhaps we could look at a floating pontoon at a later stage. The relocation of the playground and car park, which is again in option 2, it's not a pressing issue. It's quite a long way away from the river, and there's no danger of falling into the river anytime soon. So, to conclude, if we can defer this until next year, this will give us a chance to agree on an informed course of action that can address the much bigger problem of riverbank undercut in our river. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kiley is the seconder.
Mayor, I couldn't add too much more to that, but I do have it ringing in my ears that we could potentially save $1 million, and I think the ratepayers would be interested in that alone. So I ask councillors to support the deferment, and let's have a meeting down there and see what can be achieved. And I really appreciate Councillor Knight's input into this issue, a new councillor who's prepared to take on an issue and get something done about it. So thank you.
Speaker against the motion, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
One of the challenges that we face when we're newly elected councillors, and we've all been newly elected at some point, is that we often don't have a very good history of what's been going on over the past few years. So one of the great mysteries, of course, is what happened at the few meetings prior to the one we're in, and every report tells you a bit about that. So if you look on page 696, it says, third paragraph down, Council was briefed on the above in September 2021 and requested a council report detailing the options. And my recollection was that it was me that actually requested the council report detailing the options because we'd only got one option at the time, which I think was the steel sheet piling. So what I said at the time was, can we please look at some other ways of doing this, which include just like the managed retreat. Is there some way of doing it without putting the piling in place? it seemed a reasonable thing, and at the time, the comment I think I made to councils at the time was about the swan populations. At the time, I was working in the old Swan Brewery building, not involved in brewing beer, unfortunately, and there were lots of photographs there that showed what the area was like about 100 years previously, and there were loads of swans. I couldn't believe in the photographs of day trippers out there paddling. There were as many swans as there were people. It was an astonishing sight. And what I saw was there were all these steel revetments in place and steel piles and rock revetments, and I thought, oh, that must be the problem. But if you read the report, what it says is at this particular point, it's too deep for swans. Swans wouldn't want to nest there. Swans will want to go around the corner to the Helena River. And I know that section of the river well because that's where my fire brigade used to practice a particular kind of drill that involves drawing water out of the river. So it is a place where swans could potentially nest. It's not that deep, that's why we went there. There have been a number of different designs brought to council briefings over the years. I've seen several of them. I remember seeing one very fancy one some years ago that a number of community members objected to because it had a swimming beach on it, and they said, "Oh, if people swim here, they will drown. People have drowned there before," so that got canned. Unfortunately, it looked really nice to me. And then we've also had a number of community members who live in that part of Guildford who've requested that something be done. If you go down there, you'll see that the anglers want something done because it's not particularly safe for them to be on the edge of the bank anymore. I've also had Mr. Lee Rossetti and Mr. Andrew Day and another resident in the area who's, I can only remember her surname, Ms. Martin. They have been campaigning or politely requesting that something is done for really quite some time. And I remember Mr. Rossetti asked me, can we please get on with this? He said as part of the COVID economic stimulus, and it was a bit hard to resist that. But I assured him that it was on the it's on the city's long-term capital works budget. I think it was for 23, 24, something like that, Mr. Cohn. And I think what this is about, so I was able to say, don't worry, it's on its way. And what this is about is asking, as a result of the questions that Council has asked, we're asking what are the different options here? And what we've discovered is an option that is preferred, and that option that's preferred is preferred by the community, it's preferred by the fishermen, it's preferred probably by the boaters because they'd actually be able to moor against it, and most importantly, it's preferred by the traditional owners. Now, I read that when I looked through here, but I think we'll find it's in there. Yeah.
It's the last paragraph
yeah,
of key issues.
Yeah, key issues. I've got it here on the consultation. Consulting with the Aboriginal community in 2017. And key issues, basically, I'm sure you're right, Mr. Mayor, it's in there. So basically, every section of the community wants this. We have examined alternatives, and I prefer not to delay it because I have had a lot of pressure from my community to please get on with this, from all sections of the community. As it says in the report, if we go for managed retreat, we've got to remove a playground, a car park. We're going to lose an oval.
Yeah, 1 minute left, thank you.
And it's going to reduce the size of the city swan. Maybe Bassadine will get a bit bigger, and that's not a good thing, is it, councillors? So I would say we've done the investigation. We've considered the alternatives, and I think it's time to... I think what this is about is put it on the capital works budget for an appropriate year sometime in the near future. So I don't believe we're spending it... Can I ask a question, Mr Mayor? Mr Coton, what year are we planning to do this?
Perhaps if you finish your debate, then you can ask a question.
All right. Okay, I'll ask the question later. So it's to be done, I don't think next financial year, I think probably the financial year after. So that's what this is about. It's about the staff saying, as you ask councillors, there's a few different ways of doing it, and here's your options and here's our recommendation, and the whole community support it. And council has been well briefed on it.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I'll just ask Councillor Johnson if he wants to ask his question now.
I guess the question through you, Mr Mayor, to Mr Coton, is what financial year was this intended for?
Apologies, I don't have that information to hand. It's definitely not next financial year. So.
Thank you. Councillor Catalano, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. The way I see it is that we've got these problems all up along the river from Guildford right up through to... well, at least up to Middle Swan Bridge. Beyond that, I don't know for sure, but up to there. because we've got boats tearing up and down there. And I know, you know, I can read when it says in the report that it's beyond our control. But the point is that, so the question is, what are we going to do about these boats? How do we deal with the boats causing the problem in the first place? That's my question. Thank you.
If you can answer that, Mr. Coaten. I don't think it's in our realm of responsibility other than we can write to either the Water Police or the Rivers Trust.
That's correct. My understanding is we have done that on a few occasions before, but we don't have direct control over who uses boats in the river.
But the main contributing kind of factor to this erosion of these banks is the boats, correct?
It certainly is a contributing factor. Yes,
so what are the
correct.
others then?
Yep. Well, it's actually just a natural process of erosion along in that area.
Due to, what's it due to? Well, I mean, because the river's been there a long time, so just wondering why all of a sudden it's eroding.
It's an ongoing process of erosion.
What kind of process?
I'm not sure.
I think it'll be
a
weather situation, Councillor Catalano.
Well, okay. All right, well then I'll bring that up in my debate then. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard, you had a question or wish to speak?
Question.
Thank you,
Mr Mayor. Through you. Just with relations to option number 2, the managed retreat, the capital cost of $750,000, does that include the relocation costs for the playground and the car park?
I'll just have to check on that, Mr Mayor. I don't have it hand.
Thank you. We can take it on notice if you can find the answer tonight. If not, we'll get back to Councillor Howard. Any other speakers, councillors, for or against the motion? Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to follow on with some of my questions
Are you debating or are you asking questions?
No, I'm debating.
Thank you.
Yes, but I'm using my debate to follow on with some thoughts that I have about this whole the foreshores of the Swan River. I mean, it's been I've observed over the 30 years that I've been in City of Swan that particularly where the Swan River narrows, that speeding boats are just going up and down there, causing the most amazing wash and basically tearing the banks to pieces. So I never could understand how somebody could privately damage a public asset and there's no cost to them. And yet now there's a really significant $1 million cost to ratepayers. I mean, how does that work? How can you justify that? How can somebody tear up and down the river for their own pleasure and not have to pay for that price, and yet we're now having to pay for those banks to be somehow remediated? Now, the other thing is, though, if it's not just the boats, and there's these other factors that are contributing to the erosion. I mean, as I just tried to say, the river's been there a long time, and the erosion must be caused by something. So what is it that's causing the erosion? And before we spend the money, surely we need to get to the root causes of the erosion problem, because as far as I can tell, if we have the factors that are causing the erosion continuing and nobody is paying for their actions in causing that erosion, then we're basically going to be infinitely paying for what is effectively band-aid jobs and not getting anywhere fast on protecting the riverbanks. I mean, there's, once again, we'll start talking about trees, but there's, 100-year-old trees along that narrow section of the river there, that where the bank has literally been gouged out from underneath the trees, and the trees are in danger of falling into the river. And unfortunately, there's nothing behind them, there's no vegetation behind them to take their place. There's no way you can put any sedges in those riverbanks as they are currently, because the amount of wash that's coming from these boats speeding up and down the river is just destroys any kind of vegetation that you want to put actually in the riparian zone between the actual water and the sort of the more solid part of the banks. So, I mean, I think we need to do a little bit more in terms of lobbying the state government and asking for more than just their acknowledgement of the problem. I think they need to start looking at how they can tax boat users and give that money back to us, or at least come up with some really substantially long-term measures to protect the riverbanks. Because, as you say, if we don't do it, we're going to end up with ovals disappearing and our banks disappearing. And that's not to mention the the sort of ancient trees that we've still got left along there, and other vegetation. The breeding grounds for swans and for other animals. I mean, so I wanted to raise that because it doesn't seem to be in this motion, and it doesn't seem to be that this motion is actually dealing with the reasons. It's just like, oh, well, we can't do anything about that, so let's just keep giving this Band-Aid approach. I think we've got to stop that. We've got to stop thinking like that, and we've got to start thinking, you know what, we've got a serious problem here. It's going to be ongoing. It's going to cost our ratepayers a hell of a lot of money. We're still not going to fix it. So we've got to get back to where the root cause of this problem, and start getting some serious action on it. And if that means that people can't go down and rip up the banks for their own personal pleasure, well, that's just too bad.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. That's your 5 minutes. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Question, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To staff, Councillor Harler has asked and requested to find out whether the existing whether the playground and car park is included in that relocation cost of $750,000. I just wanted to ask through you to Mr Coaten, that playground, the age of that playground and when it's actually up for renewal, because it is quite old and dated, whether they were planning, because it says here to relocate it, will that playground be relocated or they replace that equipment?
Well, pending the decision of council on this matter, but certainly the playground is due for replacement, and replacement has been deferred a few years because of this issue.
Any other questions or speakers, councillors? Then I'll go back to you, Councillor Knight. You have 3 minutes for your right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So, councillors, it's pointed out about the swans living in the river. I don't see that putting up a steel piles is going to bring the swans back. They're not in the river for a variety of reasons now. Water quality, probably lack of food. I mean, you name it. Environmental problems and speeding boats, yeah. Also, the traditional owners wouldn't object. I'm sure they wouldn't object, and that's why if we can defer this, then we could go back and talk to the Aboriginal people and see what they think about option 2, because it's the only one. It's really a no-brainer. It's the only one that's going to get any funding. $1 million just for this one project. That we would have to pay for. So I think we have to look at option 2, which is the managed retreat, and surely it ticks all the boxes. It's a natural way of stabilising the riverbanks. It's got to be done all the way up the river. At some point we've got to deal with the rest of this issue in Vivash. So I'm sure we can get truckloads of rocks and tree trunks from all the trees that we cut down, and we can put them in there, and all the vegetation. And speeding boats is the biggest problem, I would suggest. I know that down on the Murray River, south of Mandurah, the Department of Industries and Fisheries they have speed traps. Maybe that's something that we could lobby for to get up here. So, councillors, I've just asked you to support this motion, and let's have a rethink and see if we can get a good outcome for the whole river, all of our jurisdiction here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those in favour of Councillor Bowman, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Richardson in support. The motion is carried. All the other councillors, which was Councillor Johnson, myself, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch were against. The motion is passed, which takes us to the next item, councillors. This is item 7.2, and I'll be calling for a mover and a seconder. It's the Consolidated Amendment Laws 2022 on shopping trolleys on page 785, councillors. Moved Councillor Bowman, seconded Councillor Kiley. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, as a procedural issue, I now have to call the purpose of the motion that was just passed. So the purpose of this local law is to remove the requirement to notify a retailer that a trolley is abandoned prior to being impounded, levy a trolley impoundment fee, and the effect of this local law is intended to result in a reduction of abandoned trolley litter in the City of Swan by introducing a more responsive and efficient management mechanism. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried unanimously. Item 9, urgent business. I've had Neil provided. It takes us to Part C of the agenda, councillors, and Councillor Jones, item C 1.1. Councillor Jones not present tonight, and she's requested a councillor defer her item through to the February meeting. Moved Councillor Parry, seconded Councillor Congdon. Is there anyone against? Then item C 1.1 will come up at our next meeting. Item C 1.2, Councillor Zanino, Bells Lookout, Brigadoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I rise to move that the Council resolve to 1, that the CEO prepare a report to Council on the status of the Bells Lookout Brigadoon, including history, status and options to finalise the ceding of this significant land to the City of Swan, given its unique potential for community and tourism uses, as well as feasibility of incorporating this land into the Bells Rapids Master Plan. 2, the CEO right to Pete Brigadoon Proprietary Limited for an update on the progress of the repairs being undertaken to the damage at the Brigadoon sales office, which require the site to be restored and made safe to the satisfaction of the city following recent storm damage.
Thank you. Your second, Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried unanimously, which takes us to item C 1.3. Councillor Johnson, expand free tree native plant program to all city residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My motion is that Council resolve to note that the free tree native plant program is currently only available to ratepayer properties over 4,000 square metres. 2, expand the free native tree plant program to all ratepayers in the city from financial year 2022-23. Request the CEO to make provision in the financial year 2022/2023 budget for this. Reason for the motion is the free tree native plant program should be expanded to all ratepayers in the City of Swan, as it is not equitable that smaller properties are subsidising larger properties. 2, recent changes to planning law are supporting tree planting on even very small properties. 3, more trees are needed everywhere as part of a strategy to combat climate change. 4, new trees are needed to replace trees felled for property development to provide habitat and food for birds.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I'll want a second before I take questions. Seconded, Councillor Knight. Thank you. Your question. I think you'll find it on page 960, Councillor Kiley. So I've got a mover and a seconder. Is there anyone against? You're against, Councillor Bowman. You wish to debate it? Thank you. Councillor Johnson, you have 5 minutes for your opening debate. Thank you.
Well, I wasn't expecting to debate this one, Mr. Mayor, because to me it's self-evident.
Expect the unexpected.
Yeah, you always expect the unexpected. It's like no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. You almost expect Michael Palin to run in. But, councillors, the situation we've got right now is that we've got, as it says in the motion, a free tree native plant programme, but it's currently only available to ratepayer properties for ratepayers who've got the grand property of over 4,000 square metres. So if you're a wealthy person owning a large property, you've got the free tree programme. But if you're someone living in Brabham with 4 square metres of garden and you've been told by the state government that you've now got to plant a tree, you don't get a free tree. Well, I just think that's unfair. So that's the first reason. It's just fundamentally unfair that one group of city ratepayers who have got more money are getting something for free when the others are not. It's just obvious, really, isn't it? We're all paying rates. We should just be getting trees in proportion to the amount of land we've got or the amount of rates we've got. There shouldn't be a cut-off that says below 4,000 square metres, sorry, no tree for you. So, councillors, I think we've got to be equitable. I've made a point of starting this in 2022-2023 because at the time I wrote the motion, I didn't know what it was going to cost. But whatever it cost, I thought, firstly, it's going to be fair and reasonable, so it's the right thing to do. And the other reason is, if you look in my regions, it's supported by our concept of an urban tree canopy. So as we know, the city is planning, I think, an urban forest strategy that will cover trees in public places. This encourages people to plant trees themselves for free. So you can go, the idea is whatever process occurs right now, everybody, every homeowner, every ratepayer, I guess probably every resident is entitled to go and get a tree and plant it on their property. I understand this happens once a year. So I think I mentioned the reason about we've had this recent change to planning law. You may recall, was it last meeting or the meeting before, we had 6 patios that were up for rejection. And the reason patios are now a bad thing is because people are supposed to plant trees instead. So if people with big yards have got a free tree, why shouldn't somebody with a small yard have a free tree? As we heard earlier, when you chop down an old tree, you're losing nesting hollows. But we've got to look to the future. We need to be encouraging as many trees to be planted as possible because who knows, in the distant future, they may become old trees and they may provide a habitat for birds. So, councillors, I think this is an entirely reasonable thing, this motion. I think it is something that has simply been overlooked. I think it was a result of, I think in my case, various members of the community contacting me over 4 years and me sort of trying to understand what they were on about. Eventually, I developed the technique of asking questions on notice. I got the answers on notice. So it was categorically clear there is such a programme. It only applies to ratepayer properties over 4,000 square metres. If you go back in the minutes, you'll find it somewhere in section 10. That's how I kind of worked it out. So to me, it was an obvious thing to do. So I got back to those ratepayers and said, yeah, I'll put up a motion to fix this because I think it needs to be fixed. So that's the reason for it. I can't see that anybody would be against it. Please vote for it.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Knight.
Can I reserve my right to speak?
You may.
Later, thanks.
Speaker against the motion, Councillor Bowman.
Mr Mayor, councillors, I'm not against planting trees, and I think we need to plant more and more. I look at places like Midland, and it's a bit of a concrete jungle. But we seem to be doing everything in an ad hoc basis. We're being reactive. Where's our strategic intent? What is our strategy? We need to be looking more at putting more effort in our strategies so we get it right the first time. Because what I see is when we do make a decision, we at times go, if only we had have known. And this is what strategies are for. And the officers quite clearly in their report, and I'll quote, could consider this matter as part of the city's urban forest strategy, which will be presented in council in the near future, and that's why I'm voting against this.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion.
Sorry.
Question, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As a question to staff, to Mr Coyton, I remember last year in a briefing it came up in regard to Midland and the streetscaping and the canopy tree streetscaping we were trying to implement for Midland, which still hasn't occurred. My question is, the trees that I asked about during that briefing, the number that you quoted me that were available, which hadn't been used, was 6,000 trees that were still available. That was the number that was given from you. And my question is, what is the difference between those 6,000 trees, and are these native trees, or are these including those type of trees?
Mr Coyton.
I don't recall the 6,000 trees in your... What was that question in relation to?
So it was in relation to, we were talking about being able to streetscape Midland and get that plan up and running for a streetscape of trees, and it still hasn't come to fruition. And I asked how many trees are available every year in the budget, and I'm sure the number that you gave me was 6,000 trees, and they hadn't been accessed.
I'm not sure about that. I think we plant 600 trees a year as part of our street tree program. I'm not sure if that's the figure that you were
600,
referring to.
okay.
Yeah, so there's 600 that are planted as part of our street tree program, where people ring up, as a general rule, it can be more than that, but that's the number we typically get, where people ring up, say they want a street tree and they're willing to water it. So, and perhaps the amount, which is, and so that's about $60,000 in the budget for that. So that may be the figure that you're referring to.
Right, so that's 60,000 in the budget for 600 trees. What is the cost of these particular trees when we're looking at these native plants and tree? Like, what is the costing for those?
It's $2 each.
Okay.
Councillor Parry, you had a question?
Just a very quick one, Mr Mayor, to Mr Coden. When is the urban forest strategy coming to council?
Mr Vanderlyn or Mr Coyton?
Mr Mayor, thank you through you. The strategy is basically ready. Depending on available dates, it will come back to council in March or April in a briefing session, and then to council.
Thank you. Councillor Prodovnik, your question?
Yeah, I've got one as well. Just about the city's urban forest strategy. If we support this motion tonight, couldn't we consider it as part of that briefing as well? Like, why do we need to wait? I know there's been a comment here and just referencing what Councillor Bowman has flagged.
Mr Vanderlyn.
Mr Mayor, whether this is part of whether this decision is made tonight or as part of that strategy, you would rather have it as part of a strategy as rather that than having it as informing the strategy, because then you basically make a decision before your strategy is in place.
Thank you.
I'd like to move an amendment.
I guess my question is, could you consider both at the same time? So just say, for example, tonight everyone supports this motion. As we move on to discuss the urban strategy, could we have that discussion as well as part of an overall discussion? It seems to be linked to me.
It is linked, and a decision can be made at the same time.
I think the comment from Mr Vanderlyn said that this motion could then inform or influence the strategy that will be brought back to us for consideration. Councillor Congdon, you indicated you had a question or an amendment?
No, I want to move an amendment if I can.
What is your amendment, please?
My amendment would be on item 3. Sorry, it's flicked off my screen.
Can we scroll down? Thanks, Megan.
Thank you. 3 is request the CEO to make provision in the financial year 2022-23 draft budget for this.
Is that acceptable to move and seconder? Thank you. So that amendment becomes part of the substantive motion. I'll call again. Are there any other speakers for or against the motion?
I speak for. That's my
Uh,
my right of reserve my right.
No. So, sorry, you reserved your right. I'll just ask, are there any other speakers before the seconder wishes to exercise his right? Fine. Councillor Knight, the floor's yours. You've got 5 minutes. If someone wishes to speak after you, they may.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, lots of cities do this, have this program, and it's a great way. I mean, for $20,000, we can get. I can't do the maths. It's 400,000 plants or something. It's a huge amount. And
Point of order, Mr. Smith. That is 400,000 times by 2 equals 800,000. I think it's a little bit incorrect. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
And it's 80,000 too, I believe.
Okay. Well, it's a lot of plants anyway. So, but I mean, this is going in people's gardens. I mean, do we really need a strategy? I mean, we just have to get trees and shrubs planted for a variety of reasons, for habitat for our native animals and to try and absorb a bit of carbon. So, I hope that council can support this. It's a great initiative, and we really need to get on board with getting trees in the ground in the city of Swan. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got a question, Councillor Johnson. It's your motion. In point 1, it's got note that a free tree/native plant. Do I take that as also a native tree? So it means both a native tree and a native plant?
That's a good question, actually. This is the exact phrasing that I got from Mr. Coton, so I'm not completely sure what it means. I assume it means that it's a native tree and native plant, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. As long as everyone's of that understanding and people aren't ordering... hang on, Councillor Catalano. This is why I'm trying to clarify the point. So would you like to... I'll move an amendment to your motion to read native tree/native plant, if there's a seconder. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Catalano. Is there anyone against? There's no one against. That comes part of the substantive motion. The reason I did that, Councillor Johnson, by way of explanation, is I didn't want people ordering Chinese tallows, weeping plum trees and what have you. Let's stick to the native trees, which are best for the environment. So, are there any other speakers? Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. And, Mayor, you touched a little bit on some of my thinking in regard to this. First things first, if you have a small block and you happen to have a romantic idea of planting a tree such as a eucalypt in the backyard, and you happen to pick a Eucalyptus grandis, it'll be 2 to 3 times bigger than this room, and you'll end up having to pay to cut it down. And by the way, that sort of thing has happened all over the place because people don't know what they're buying. That's a fundamental problem. But also, if you think about melaleucas, some of those can get pretty big, and some of the acacias as well can be quite large, taking over a backyard quite aggressively. But in particular, things like your acacias, they only last about 5 or 6 years. And a lot of people grow them, and because you can get them for free through the program, and you end up with a mess, and they've got to put it out in the front, and the city's got to take it away. So it becomes a cycle that doesn't really achieve the bigger picture, and that's one of the reasons I think we should be waiting and looking at the plan about how to structure the overall greening of our city, which is desperately needed, and I've argued many times in this chamber that we're seeing urban development that's just disgraceful without any canopy much at all. So, in particular too, the eucalypts, people don't realise that they drop an enormous number of leaves. They plant one, great intentions, before you know it, I've had enough of this, in come the tree loppers and they cut it down. So a lot of strategy, I think, needs to be built around it, and I think Councillor Bowman was absolutely right about the strategy To me, this is premature. We need to get quite structured about how we do it. And whilst the intention may be good, I think we should be much more structured in our overall program to do better in terms of growing trees, the right trees, in the right place. But more importantly, not to effectively waste a lot of money, but to be clear that we get value for that. It might be $2 when it's this big, but what's it going to be worth when you've got to cut it down because it's too big? I can tell you, you can pay over $1,000 a tree to cut them down if they're hanging over your roof and dropping limbs and creating bird nesting hollows. So as much as I'd like to push this along, my encouragement would be to staff, hopefully, to see it come back in a structured way much sooner, and we can get our teeth into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. You have a question, Councillor Howard, or you should end the debate?
I'd just like to speak for the motion, if possible.
Thank you. When you're ready.
Thank you. Just in response to Councillor Henderson, I don't know if there's really going to be a very big uptake in the program, but I guess it means it's available for residents to do. So as far as the cost or the expense, it might not be that significant, but it's definitely a positive gesture towards the residents as far as equity across all ratepayers. And I think when it comes to addressing the point of planting the wrong tree in the wrong property to get the result that you're talking about, or the potential result of a grandis or limbs, then I'd suggest that staff could guide people on the correct tree to plant in their residency or in their block size. I don't think that could be too onerous. I imagine every plant comes with, or every tree comes with a kind of, grows to this height and this width, and actually takes it helps the city out, because it means the responsibility for the watering and the maintenance of that tree belongs to the resident, and it's not a cost to the city. It adds to our greening program, and yes, I think it's a good motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Councillor McCulloch, you got a question, or you wish to debate?
A question?
Sorry, I saw Councillor McCulloch's hand first. You've got a question, Councillor Henderson. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The $2 plants that we supply is one thing. Do we have the staff resources to be able to deal with thousands of requests about what to do with a tree?
Mr. Coaten.
Well, the trees are planted on the private property, and information is provided to the people in relation to the tree when they order it, and is available when they collect it. We've been handing out 10,000 trees and shrubs a year as part of the program for quite a while, and it's never been an onerous issue to provide that information to people. So I don't imagine that if we increase the number, I don't think that would become an onerous problem. The information is available on the type of trees. People plant them on their private property, and then they look after them themselves.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. Have you got a question, Councillor Prodovnik, or?
Sure. I just wanted to double check something. From what I understand, the trees are being supplied to rural properties through Trillion Trees. Is that something is that what we're doing? Because I thought that's where the trees came from.
The city orders them through Trillion Trees at the moment, yes.
Thank you. Councillor McCulloch. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lucas. I think from even all the questions surrounding this motion, and I do love this motion, councillors, but with the questions and maybe the unanswered questions around it, I think if we consider this matter as part of our urban forest strategy, it would be prudent, and it would allow us to unpack strategically how we're going to manage this and to best facilitate our residents on smaller properties. At the moment, we do have a lack of knowledge and understanding as to what is suitable to plant on smaller properties in the way of trees, natives, and native plants. And to be able to look at this through our urban forest strategy and unpack this further, I think that's really essential. At the moment, we do have people and residents questioning what they should be planting, what is going to be beneficial for our bee populations, for our native birds. I know in Ellenbrook we've had a lot of plantings of very low-growing natives that black cockatoos are foraging on main roads, and that's something that is a concern and that should never have happened. So if we look at all this, great motion, but if we can just take a breath, consider this within the urban forest strategy, I think we'll get it right.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Well, it'll become part of it, Councillor. Yes, I think that'd be contrary to the current motion I had before. I'll ask once more, any other speakers for or against? Councillor Johnson, your right to reply. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very interesting debate, Mr Mayor. Look, councillors, this is about a strategy to plant more trees. And speaking as someone who's a project manager who just executes strategies, strategy is quite a fascinating thing. And what is strategy? So I've got a one-sentence explanation of it. I saw in a satirical magazine once, it explained the function of the CEO, the strategy of the CEO of British Petroleum. His strategy was to sell as much oil as possible to as many people as possible for the highest possible price. So, councillors, that's the strategy for you. And that's the strategy we follow in here with trees. We're giving as many trees away to as many people as possible, so we've got the greatest possible tree canopy we can possibly have. So that's what this is about. It's really simple. I'm following that same successful strategy that you heard me talk about earlier. Going back to what we've heard it can be part of and subsumed into the urban strategy. What it means is we're getting started sooner. It's never too soon to plant a tree. We don't have to wait in case it's the wrong tree. Councillors, if you're not sure what to plant on a small block, I can give you the answer. Plant a small tree. Plant one that's not going to grow too big. Don't plant an Norfolk pine. They might look like the nice pot plants, but they can grow quite big. So plant a small tree. Ask for help. If there are unanswered questions about what kind of tree to have, well, ask the question. That's what we're here for as councillors. We're here to answer questions. If staff resources are available to people who've got a 4,000 square metre property, they can be available for people who've got a 300 square metre property. That's my view. There's no reason why they can't have a tree. An interesting argument has been raised that's fascinated me. Planting trees will cause people to chop down trees. Right, so plant a tree, it grows, and then it has to be chopped down. Well, there you go. That's a good one. So therefore, we shouldn't plant trees because it takes trouble to chop them down. As we say, why wait? Councillors, we know we're in an emergency situation.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
We need to get moving. This is a strategic decision to start planting more trees, and I think we need to advertise it. It's going to be part of our strategy. Let's be ready for the next planting season in the winter. So, councillors, I would urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those councillors in favour. I have Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Richardson. The motion is passed. I think there's 3 against, maybe 4 against. Councillor Bowman, myself, Councillor Podovnik and Councillor McCulloch. Are you a 4? So there's 3 against. Thank you, councillors. That takes us to the next item. C 1.4, Councillor Johnson, retention of confidential agenda and minutes on diligent boards. It's on page 961 of the agenda. Thanks, councillors.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. My motion is that Council resolve to direct the CEO to retain the confidential agenda and minutes of each meeting of Council in the diligent board archive, commencing with the confidential agenda of the ordinary meeting of Council of 15th of December 2021. That's this one. Reason for the motion is that confidential agendas and minutes are not currently retained in the diligent board's archive, which councillors use, even though public ordinary meeting of council agendas and minutes are retained in the archive. 2, to allow councillors in their role of elected representative to easily access past confidential reports by accessing the agendas electronically to enable them to fulfil their role when they need to review the history of a confidential matter. 3, councils have made a declaration of office and are bound by the Local Government Act 1995 and regulations to respect the confidentiality of the confidential agenda. 4, diligent boards has previously advised that its system is encrypted and secure and cannot be accessed by anyone other than the councillors with the appropriate identity and access credentials.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bowman. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare it carried unanimously. Well, fifth time lucky, Councillor. Item C 1.5, Councillor Howlett, Old Brick Paving, Albert Street, Bellevue. It's on page 963. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. So my motion is that the council resolve to authorise the CEO to dispose of the paving bricks that were recently recovered by the city from a drainage construction project in Albert Street, Bellevue, by gifting them to the Bellevue Residents and Ratepayers Association. And the reason for my motion is that the Bellevue Residents and Ratepayers Association have requested the paving bricks for future use in Bellevue.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Podovnik. Is there anyone against? I just have a question. Do you propose that the Residents Association come and collect them, or do the city have to deliver them?
No, the Residents Association are happy to collect them.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Catalano.
What are they going to be used for?
As far as I know, they're going to hold them until something of value comes up that they can be used for. Suggested something at Todd Park perhaps in the future, but they just want to incorporate them into the Bellevue infrastructure at some point in the future.
And do we know how old these bricks are?
Mr. Coaten.
Not exactly. They were assessed as being, I think, around the 1930s. From memory, I did circulate the archaeological report to councillors a couple of weeks ago, which I do have somewhere in here, but I think it was around,
That's okay.
Somewhere around.
Thanks.
You got a question, Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question. How many bricks are we looking at here and where are they going to get stored?
Mr. Coaten, if you can
I don't have the exact number. It's a relatively smaller amount. It probably just makes up one layer on a brick pallet. And they're being stored at the depot at the moment, and the intention is that the Bellevue Residents Association will collect them and store them where they see fit.
Okay, I'll ask, is there anyone against the motion? Being no one against, I declare it carried unanimously. Takes us to item C 1.6, Councillor Johnson, Great Eastern Highway resurfacing on page 964. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My motion is that council resolve for the CEO to write to Main Roads WA asking when Main Roads plans to resurface the Great Eastern Highway in the centre of Midland, to publish the reply in the public agenda. And the reason for the motion is that numerous potholes are evident on Great Eastern Highway in the Midland area.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Podovnik. Is there anyone against? Question, Councillor Henderson first.
Is this not an operational matter?
Well, you see the officer's comment there, but I have a valid motion before me. I've had a mover, I've had a seconder. If you're against, I'll put it to debate. You've got a question, Councillor Bowman?
I have, Mr. Mayor, through you to the CEO. If the CEO writes to Main Roads, he would then provide it to us councillors, and it's nothing stopping us from sharing that with members of the public.
Mr. CEO, Mr. Coaten.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't see unless Main Roads advise that matter's confidential. If they don't, then happy to share it.
And Mr. Mayor, my next question is, if they publish the reply in the public agenda, would that then need a report to go with it, or it's just going to be floating somewhere in the agenda?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, can the councillor clarify?
So the second recommendation is to publish the reply in the public agenda. I can't understand where that would be in the agenda. It's not a question on notice by a councillor, so it would have to be a report. Am I right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be correct.
Mr. Mayor, can I request the two items be put separately, please?
Is there a seconder for that?
No, you
don't need a seconder.
No, you can just split them up one by one.
Yeah, any objection to that, Councillor Johnson? Okay, so councillors will first decide part one of the motion. I had a mover and a seconder. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that part 1 of the motion is carried unanimously. Now part 2, which reads to publish the reply in the public agenda. Is there anyone against? There is. You wish to debate it? No. I'm going to put it to the council. Those in favour? It's unanimous other than Councillor Bowman. Declare that motion passed in item 2. Thank you, councillors. That takes us to the next item is C1.7, Councillor Brodovnik, retention of heritage properties, Junction Parade at Midland. Thank you.
So my motion is that council... Where is it? Can I read it from the board? Oh, yes, okay. All right, motion that the council resolve to 1, amend the Midland Oval redevelopment master plan to retain the following buildings as identified in the city's local heritage survey and their front setbacks. A, lot 81, number 26 Junction Parade Midland, formerly 6th Avenue. B, lot 218, number 22 Junction Parade Midland, formerly 2 Avenue. Lot 2, number 25 Junction Parade, formerly 5 Avenue. Lot 1, number 27 Junction Parade, formerly 7 Avenue. Reasons? The reason for the motion: 1, in 2019, 2 petitions, one in May with 666 signatures and one in August with 1,174 signatures, was handed in asking council to upgrade the heritage protection for historic houses on the avenue. 2, these petitions show residents want to see a firmer commitment to saving these houses, and it is evidence of the community's desire to recognise the cultural heritage of the area. 3, currently the Midland Oval redevelopment does not include the retention of these heritage houses in its current master plan. 4, this amendment will give certainty to potential developers within the Midland Oval master plan area that these buildings and their visual relationship to the street are to be retained in any redevelopment of the precinct.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howlett. Is there anyone against? There is. You wish to debate it? Thank you. You've got 5 minutes for your debate, Councillor Brodovnik.
Okay, there's been a number of petitions asking council to protect the houses on the avenue leading into the Midland Oval. Why? Because they house our history, and our history is unique to Midland. Guildford has an Anzac walk trail, a whole walk trail with poppy plaques at the front of houses to commemorate the homes of their families who served. Midland also has a heritage home. Actually, Midland also has an Anzac home. It's one of the heritage houses on the street that we're talking about tonight. The difference is our Anzac home is earmarked for demolition in our current Midland Oval master plan. I ask you, what is wrong with that picture? As a council, we can vote to keep that home, put a poppy plaque on it and include it in a tiny heritage strip entry statement into the new Midland Oval redevelopment. If that's not enough history for you, that house, built in 1906, was once Midland's maternity hospital, and there are still people alive today who were born there. That's another plaque we can put on the same building. Last year, council listened to the community who lobbied for these houses to be saved. In response, our design guidelines were updated with a recommendation for these houses to be kept in the new development. So why isn't that good enough? Because that recommendation can be ignored by developers, and it will be ignored by developers, simply because they will be working to our current master plan. And our current master plan does not include keeping these houses. So a developer acting in good faith will refer to our current master plan, which puts a car park on one of the heritage houses and a podium over 3 others. If we think these 4 houses are worth saving, we actually need to include them in our master plan. Now, it's not fair to not include these houses in the master plan and then expect the developer to include them later when their DA comes to council and the community gets wind of the fact these houses will be demolished. Let's not make this a controversial development that pits the community against the developer. Let's take action now to avoid that. What we're talking about tonight is 4 small houses on an 11-hectare development. They are unique and they embody an era when Midland was a railway workshop town. One of the saddest stories I've heard is the fate of the Carnegie Library. If you look at old black and white photos, it was a beautiful and unique piece of architecture. designed to fit on the corner of what is now Carnegie Gardens, next to our town hall. A number of Carnegie libraries opened across the world from 1883, and in 1909, Midland Junction was one of 4 towns in Australia to get a Carnegie library. That library was officially opened in 1912 by the Premier of the day. 51 years later, the Shire of Swan Council voted to demolish it. Why? Because they didn't want to pay for its upkeep. For the record, the City of Swan is the only local government in Australia that demolished its Carnegie Library. Every other state repurposed their building and invested in its upkeep. The other 3 towns in Australia understood the value, not the cost, but the value of that heritage building. And tonight I'm asking this council to understand the value of ours. Imagine the heritage hub we would have here today, in the old town centre next to the town hall, if we still had the Carnegie Library. Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past. The Carnegie Library was lost by a council vote, and I'm asking for these houses built in the same era to be saved tonight by your vote. What I'm asking council to do is to keep some of Midland's actual heritage in the 11-hectare design, not a lot, just 4 very small houses. It's a small ask, it can be done, and it should be done. Please support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Howard is the seconder.
Can I reserve my right to reply, please?
You may. Speakers against the motion. Councillor Bowman.
Mr Mayor, councillors, I don't disagree with pretty well anything that Councillor Prodovnik said. But there's one thing I've heard before I got on this council and while I've been on this council, and that was there's a successful motion to put a hold on anything at the Midland Oval Redevelopment Master Plan. And I've actually been told by a number of councillors about that. They fought for it, they got it, but here we are now, when it suits us and for what we believe in, changing it and now saying it's okay. So for that very fact, I can't support this motion, and I'll be foreshadowing a deferral motion that we consider this after we receive that report.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Councillor Kiley.
Mayor, if you don't mind, could we scroll down to the last reason or the reasons that were put up on the board? Because the last one really resonated with me.
You go scroll up.
Scroll up or down, I'm not sure which one. This amendment will give certainty to potential developers within the Midland Oval Master Plan area that these buildings and their visual relationship to the street are to be retained in any redevelopment of the precinct. We need to give certainty to the community. We need to give certainty to developers. This will do this. This issue is not going to go away. Like Councillor Johnson's motion, he's taken it to council 5 times and it finally won. This will win ultimately, in my belief. It will win. We will save these houses. Councillor Prodovnik, your motion will come back again. If we fail tonight, it'll be back here in 3 months. It'll be back here in 6 months, 9 months. It'll keep coming back. But ultimately, these buildings will be saved. Maybe the makeup of council has to change, but maybe there's some realisation from the current set of councillors that they have to be saved. But that's the right thing to do. We need to save these buildings. We might as well get on with it now. There's so many elements to the Midland Oval precinct area that we need to possibly have a look at this year. This, for me, is a given. We need to give certainty to developers. We need to move on with this. These are important buildings. This area is the lifeblood of Midland as far as I see it. It's the most beautiful set of buildings that you go down there, you can imagine them in the future with Chinese lanterns or some sort of particular lighting with restaurants, and they will have value into the future. They are historic. They become more and more historic as every day passes. So please, let's move on with this. Let's get it done now. Let's not have it coming back to council time and time again. Support Councillor Prodovnik's motion, and let's move forward with this to give certainty to the community and to developers. Because unless we shouldn't be condemning these houses on an almost 50-50 basis at council. If we haven't got absolute certainty as to what to do with them, then they should stay. They really should stay. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Catalano.
Yes, I'm speaking for, because I know, well, the difference between this particular motion and motions that have been put up previously in terms of, changing or dealing with any of that property on the precinct before the whole kind of sunset clause issue is resolved, and anything that might come from that. The difference with this one is that heritage is not an issue that suddenly appeared in Midland. I know for a fact that for the last 30 years, people in this community have wanted and have done absolutely utmost to retain heritage buildings in this town. And, something, yes, they will win. And they'll win because the argument is absolutely sound. It is actually an absolute winner. To turn Midland into a beautiful mix of old and new, we need to retain these character heritage properties, the homes, the buildings, and not look back and go, oh, how sad, we made such a terrible mistake that can't be repaired. Like all of these other old things that we've discussed in these meetings, including ancient trees and old bridges, they have character. They give us reference to our past, and that's why people like them. And they like them to visit them, but they make fabulous, absolutely fabulous commercial buildings. And I think you don't even have to go any further than Guildford to just see how successful heritage has been for the City of Swan. And the same will apply in Midland, and the same will apply anywhere else in the City of Swan. Heritage is an absolute winner, just as old trees are an absolute winner. I mean, it's just obvious. And that's why we need to provide developers, and that's reasonable that developers need the certainty, because once they know that heritage is valued and is valuable, then they go, okay, you know what, I'm going to think about how I'm going to incorporate that building, that old tree into the design, and I'm going to use that to make my project even more of a winner. It becomes a focus for the success of what it is they're trying to achieve, for bringing people in. Look at this beautiful building. Look how we've done it up. We're turning it into, this is a fabulous, the mind, the imagination just runs away. I mean, the things you can do when you've got these really fabulous heritage and natural assets. I mean, everyone in this room knows what I'm talking about, because we all like to live and work and play in those kind of environments. That's why they're so successful. That's why Guildford is so successful. And that's what Midland
1 minute left, thank you.
And that's what Midland can also be. It can be that successful. Now, there's no time like the present to start working on getting that message out to developers. And we own the properties. We show potential investors that we're serious about the built fabric of this town, that we're serious about our history, that we're proud of our history, our collective history, and that we want them to also come in and share that history with us and make something of it. A railway town, the first railway town in Western Australia. I mean, already Already you've got yourself a focus. You've already got yourself a theme. I mean, you don't even have to invent it.
Thank you,
It's
Councillor
there.
Catalano. That's your 5
Thank
minutes. Any other speakers, for or against? Question, Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, a couple of questions. And I'll probably get the wrong wording. The halt motion until we get a report back. When are we likely to get that report?
Mr. Vanderlyn.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Could Councillor just clarify a halt motion?
That's the sunset clause.
Yeah. Mr. Vanderlyn.
Mr. Mayor, through you, Council will be briefed early in the new year, and again, depending on when time is available for that, probably in late February, on early March, on the outcome of that study, and that will then be followed by a formal report. So you would expect it in March, April as a report, but a briefing earlier than that.
Okay. Next question, Mr. Mayor. What were the reasons given for that when the sunset clause was moved, for moving it?
Mr. Mayor, again through you, the reason for the sunset clause being moved at the time was it related to the making funding available for the construction and the progression of public infrastructure projects on the Oval.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, if this motion's passed, what's the financial impact to the city?
I don't know whether any officer can answer that question.
That's okay, Mr. Mayor. If this motion's passed, what limitations will this place on the Midland Oval redevelopment master plan?
Mr. Vanderlinden, if you can.
Mr. Mayor, although we haven't analysed the full impact of these buildings being retained specifically, if you look in the report under the financial and design impact on page 968, we've identified there that these 4 properties with a total of 3,987 square metres, so it's almost 4,000 square metres of land that it takes up. Those properties were acquired for approximately $4.5 million over time. So that was the cost to council. So in terms of the redevelopment potential of that land, it's 4,000 square metres of land that would not be developed to its full potential, being the 10 or 12 stories of buildings that could develop on the site. Having said that, if the buildings are retained within a new development, and a broader new development can capture some of that land around it. So those are all details that will have to be further investigated. But roughly, the impact is 4,000 square metres of land that will not be developed to its full potential in accordance to, if you consider the council's current vision of on the Oval to actually develop it in accordance with the plan.
So, Mr. Mayor, my next question, just to clarify that one. So the limitations we're unsure at this point in time to other developments?
Yes, the detail of it has not been looked at.
Mr. Mayor, my final question. What advice does the Department of Local Government give to councils when they haven't got all the information to make a fully informed decision before them?
I don't know if anyone can answer that. You'd want to go, Ms. Albrecht? Or Mr.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, councillors are supposed to make decisions with the information that's placed in front of them at the time, so council would need to make a decision on this matter accordingly.
I'll ask again, are there any other speakers for or against the motion? And you have... Sorry. Oh, sorry. I saw Councillor Johnson's hand first. Councillor Johnson, you have the floor. Well, I've called your name, Councillor. I saw it first, so you've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'm a resident of Guildford, which, as we've heard tonight, is a heritage-listed town. Its economy is and commerce in Guildford is growing as a result of the heritage listing. People enjoy visiting the place. It's an area well known for tourists and entertainment businesses these days. It's really quite booming. Councillors, I used to work in Midland. I used to work at Langate, and I used to walk from the Langate building out the back down the avenue long before I was a councillor, and I used to walk out of that modern building down the avenue, and I was really impressed by these beautiful old buildings. I thought, who would have thought that in somewhere like Midland there'd be such beautiful buildings like this? That's what I thought at the time. And I thought, well, isn't it great they're still here? You know, I thought, that's beautiful. Look, I thought some of the buildings were amazing. You're thinking they could be in a really upmarket, expensive suburb somewhere near to the coast. And then I used to continue my walk across the oval, and I used to think, oh, what a beautiful oval, isn't it nice it's still here? You know, the way the grass cools the air. I used to love that, and I used to walk into Midland Gate and get my lunch, then walk back. Councillors, these heritage buildings are important, and wherever you go, you will, in successful commercial areas, you will generally find there's been retention of heritage buildings in close proximity to new modern buildings, and really that's what this motion is about. We're saying that in order to provide that sort of interesting, I think the planning phrase is activation. One way of doing it, interesting people, is to use the heritage buildings that are there. They could potentially be cafes or some sort of entertainment capability. We've seen on Cale Street that the old school building and the principal's house have been turned into very successful businesses. That's what I envisage is going to happen on the avenue. That's why we need to retain this, so that there is somewhere interesting to go for those people who either live in or work in the new and bigger buildings that are going to be built around the oval. That's why we need to do this. Now, the great advantage of this motion is, as Councillor Carley pointed out, part 4. The amendment gives certainty to potential developers. So it means that the community know what's happening and the developers know what's happening. When they offer to buy the land, they understand exactly what they're getting into, because they're going to be buying some buildings that are preserved for the future, and they're going to have to find some use for them that's compatible with their heritage structure. This motion is about building a better Midland by retaining some of the really interesting features of it as part of the new development. It was suggested it might place limitations on the master plan. Far from it. It does the opposite. It creates clear and visible and tangible constraints that everybody can understand, and it stops this. Many people have commented on the endless special meetings and demonstrations and annual electors meetings on this subject. This is what people want. This is why they're doing it. They want us to do this kind of thing. They want us to retain the heritage of the area and put up appropriate new developments to build the new Midland. There are no limitations on the master plan. It's clarifying it. And as for, are we fully informed? Well, I can only speak for myself. I'm absolutely certain I'm fully informed about the Midland Oval. I've got hundreds and hundreds of documents about it. I've written endless reports myself. I've produced loads of presentations, alternative designs, options, different ways forward. I've done my own financial modelling. I've called for financial modelling. I've moved numerous motions on the subject. I'm absolutely confident I'm fully informed. And if you want to be even better informed, there's a really good 3 or 4 page explanation of it here. Councillors, this is the way forward.
You have
We've got
1
to
minute
create
left, thank
certainty.
you.
So I can only feel, with the information I've gathered over the last 6 or 7 years, 6 on council, probably a year before that when I started looking into this, I believe absolutely this is the right thing to do. It's the right thing. It's the right thing for the city, and it's going to mean a more valuable development when we eventually build it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Condon. You indicated you withdraw. Any other speakers, councillors? Councillor Henderson.
Some questions, if I may.
Questions.
Mr. Mayor, the houses we're talking about, have they been significantly rebuilt over the years?
Mr. Vanderlyn.
Mr. Mayor, all these houses were assessed by a heritage consultant as a result of a council resolution that's in 2018. And all these buildings were classified as Category 3 heritage properties, which if you look on page 967, category 3 properties are defined in the local government inventory as having some or moderate significance to the locality and are defined as contributing to the heritage of the locality, but with some altered or modified elements, not necessarily detracting from the overall significance of the place. So from that, you can take that these buildings have been changed over time.
So, Mr Mayor, if the next question would be, if I wanted to build a house that looked like that in, say, Brabham, I could do that. We could have that kind of look house. Is that something that people could do?
You're asking me, Councillor. I think you can build any building any way you want.
Yeah. So really what I was trying to get to is that the next question is what percentage of heritage fabric would the staff think that would exist within those properties?
If you're not sure, Mr Vandlin, you can take it on notice rather than just guessing.
Mr Mayor, I don't think it's possible to have that answered, even from the work that was done from the heritage consultants didn't go into that specific detail.
So to be clear, they've been significantly and mostly rebuilt. Is that right? Yeah. Thank you. I think that was the message I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors like to enter the debate?
Well, I've got a question.
Question,
I mean, what difference? I mean, for a start, those houses haven't been rebuilt. But even if they had been, what difference would that make? Because to their heritage value.
Councillor Catalano, they're all listed as category 3. They've all had some type of extensions.
They've had alterations, but they haven't been rebuilt. They haven't been rebuilt.
I'm just trying to answer your question. I don't think it's fair on the staff. Mr Van Linden said he hasn't got that information. He can't provide that information. It wasn't even in the Heritage Architecture
Can I just take umbrage then with the fact that the word rebuilt was used when in fact those properties have not been rebuilt.
Added to, altered.
That's correct. Altered is fine, but not rebuilt.
That, Councillor Catalano. I'm sure people could take umbrage at a lot of things that sit around this council table that are incorrect. I'm asking for the last time, any other councillors wish to enter debate? If not, Councillor Prodovnik, you've got 3 minutes for your right to reply. Thank you.
Okay, just very quickly in response to Councillor Henderson's comment, I did ask someone from the Guildford Historical Society to have a look at the buildings. They told me that 2 of them were absolutely beautiful with the original facade of a Federation era. So they were very impressed with it, and potentially they will come and speak to this item if it comes back to council. So they were very concerned about its demolition, actually. So very quickly, a review of the Midland Oval obviously doesn't change the fact that right now developers need certainty, so that's just reiterating again what's been said over and over tonight. We have already included keeping these houses in our guidelines. They're in our guidelines, they're in our recommendations. This is such a logical next step, really, to just ratify our commitment to putting them in the actual master plan. It's a logical next step, and again, it gives clear direction and certainty to the developer. These 3 houses are in good condition. The cost has been something that's been raised a few times tonight. These 3 houses are in very good condition.
4 houses, Councillor?
Yep. 3 of these houses are in very good condition, so there won't be a big cost in restoring them. One of these houses does need a little bit of work, but that's a cost we can absorb, particularly because all 4 of these houses have tenants in them with commercial leases. So they're actually, making us money here. A review of the Midland Oval will give us an idea of overall cost, of the whole development. But when it comes to these houses, we still need to nut out those details with the developer as to how they consider how to deal with these heritage houses in the design. Ultimately, the cost of keeping these houses will depend on what the developer wants. I mean, we're obviously going to give them some options here. Do they want to include the heritage houses in their design? Do they want to own the building? Do we keep ownerships of these houses within the design? These are discussions that we'll have as part of the development discussions if a developer expresses interest. So the first step tonight is to give the developer certainty that these houses need to be kept in the Midland Oval Master Plan design, and how that can be done depends on what the developer proposes, and at that stage there will be a raft of options that can be considered. This is simply step 1. So we can't really race ahead here and try to attach costs to everything.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about 400 square metres in an 11-hectare site.
4,000.
4,000 square metres in an 11-hectare site. I mean, again, this is simply step one. It's a logical step to ratify the commitment we've already expressed as a council. It's a step that will give both the developer and the community certainty. Again, cost is something that will be discussed and can only be discussed in conjunction with the developer. Please support this motion.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those councillors in favour. I have Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congerdon, Councillor Knight, Councillor Richardson and Councillor McCulloch. Those against were Councillor Henderson, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Parry, myself and Councillor Bowman. The motion is passed. Thank you. It's 8:10, councillors. We're going to break for 10 minutes, as we normally do at 8 o'clock-ish. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. That takes us to the next item in the agenda, C1.8, Councillor McCulloch, Women's Wellness Sessions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lucas. My motion, Women's Wellness Sessions, that the Council resolve to request the CEO to prepare a report to Council to consider women's wellness sessions at all City of Swan leisure centres. These sessions would be open to females of all ages and may include, but not be limited to, opportunities to provide swimming education and aquatic recreation, gym sessions, socialisation and relaxation opportunities for women in a private, safe and enjoyable environment. Mr Mayor, may I just make one addition there?
Thank you. It's your motion.
The report to include options during current leisure centre operating hours and also after hours. The reason for the motion: women's only sessions provide opportunities for our diverse and multicultural female population of residents and ratepayers. They also provide a safe and comfortable space for those women who may be at risk, experiencing domestic violence, body image issues and general health conditions where they may be very self-conscious.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Prodovnik. Is there anyone against? You wish to debate it, Councillor Parry? Thank you. You've got 5 minutes, Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, we have had some discussions about this in the past, and I know that we had a deputation by Ms Tracy Cave last week, which was fairly comprehensive. We have a hugely diverse and multicultural population across the City of Swan. Of that, we have a large number of women and young women. And as we grow in that diversity and multiculturalism, aspects of our culture and everyday being take on new shapes and forms. This is something that's not new to some local government areas within the state, even within the nation, where programs similar to this are in place, whether it be during operating hours or after operating hours, and looking at what is actually viable for the city and weighing that up as to what is beneficial and in best interests of our female population. So, in light of that, looking at these sessions as a city and continuing to lead the way in modelling an example that does incorporate our greater communities makes sense. Ms Cave, in her deputation last Wednesday, unpacked statistics and numbers as to the percentages of our residents and ratepayers who are within those groups. We may see them as minority groups, but if we look at them in a broader sense across multicultural groups, women who may be at risk in regards to domestic violence, body image, mental health and wellbeing, and safety aspects, we're looking at a fairly considerable amount of our female population. So this is, councillors, again, we say it and it is cliched now, a report to inform us of the options, the costs, the benefits, yes, and the possible detriments, not that I can see many, so that we can then make an informed decision, so that we can then have a look at that report, possibly make some amendments, talk to each other and come up with something that is workable and that will benefit groups in our city. So I encourage you to support this motion and for us to be one of those local governments leading the way in this space, to be able to make way for something that is unique and that is going to be of great benefit to some very incredible people and people that do need to be heard and to actually move through experiences that may not be so pleasant and that we might not be privy to or have experienced in those senses. So I encourage you to support this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brodovnik is the seconder.
Yeah, I'm really pleased that Councillor McCulloch's brought this back. And I applaud the City for its partnering with Multicultural Women's Services. This motion gives us an opportunity to look beyond what is already being done. And the City has outlined reasons why we don't hold women's only wellness sessions. And a report can look at how we can hold these sessions. It could provide solutions and it can consider possibilities as well. This motion is simply seeking more information for us to consider before we decide. It's a simple request. Please support this motion.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion.
I'll be very quick, Mr.
Question. Question, Councillor Congdon first.
Question to the CEO. Question to the CEO. Mr. CEO, will the report include all of the financial implications?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll endeavour to include financial implications within the report.
Sorry, endeavour to or will?
We will endeavour to the best of our knowledge to include all financial information that we can gather.
Finish, Councillor Congdon.
I need to move an amendment.
I'll take your amendment now before Councillor Parry enters debate because it may change the way he wishes to debate the item. What's your amendment? And I'll see if it's acceptable to the mover in the second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My amendment is to request the CEO to prepare a report to Council to include the consideration of all of the things that have been identified by Councillor McCulloch, but to ensure there is a financial implication statement.
I thought that would have been part of the normal report, but if the mover and the seconder are happy to include that, we'll have that put in and it'll become part of the substantial motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just a bit concerned with the word endeavour.
Well, I think from the CEO's point of view, you may think of something that the staff did not on financial issues, but I'm sure the report will be very comprehensive. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Parry.
I wish to restate my position that I had in the previous debate, and the fact that I believe the City of Swan has a high duty of care to ensure egalitarianism for all Swan active centres. I believe that there should be no differentiation in treating men and women. I believe there should be no differentiation in race. I believe there should be no differentiation in regards to religion as well. I think that the only thing that matters is if they pay the fee in regards to it. There should be absolutely no other point of differentiation in regards to it. That's why I cannot support this motion just out of principle. And also the fact that last time when we debated this, we had a look at the times that were available for a lot of the events that we have within this Swan Active centres. We had a lot of classes that were already very busy in regards to that as well, councillors. For example, the Ballajura Aquatic Centre, majority of the days between Monday and Friday, 8 to 5, were busy because of swim schools. Also, the fact that we have the Swan Active Midland Centre closed down as well. That makes the Altone Centre quite busy as well. I have no problem women having the ability to have their own fitness classes in private institutions like Fiesta Fitness or the state swim schools or anything else like that. I have absolutely no issue whatsoever. But again, I wish to restate that the City of Swan and the Swan Active groups needs to ensure egalitarianism is in place. There should be no point of difference. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for? Councillor Kiley.
Mayor, thank you. Councillors, you'll recall I seconded Councillor Bailey's, or Mayor Bailey at the time's motion when this came to Council previously. I think it's substantially the same, I believe. I supported it then and I support it now. The reason I do that is because there are people in the community and many women in the community who, for a range of reasons, would benefit from having the privacy of a fitness class or a swimming class that they normally wouldn't attend simply because there might be men there, or as we heard previously, there's the possibility, just the slight possibility of a man or a husband or a former partner turning up to a class where that woman would want to attend. It's an issue that myself as a male am not fully aware, understanding of. But for many women out there, this is a real issue in the community. It is a big issue in the community. We need to be aware of it. It's not the fact that we want to be equal or egalitarian. This is a service that we as a council should be looking to provide. It goes beyond just egalitarianism, and just to get some idea of what sort of classes where we do conduct. I looked at the Swan Active Beachborough timetable for this upcoming Monday. They have a hustle class at 6 a.m, a body pump class as well. At 7 a.m, they have an active seniors class. Now, I don't know what the cut-off age for that is, but are we being egalitarian by saying that, well, if you're below the age of 50, for example, you can't go to the active seniors classes? We're providing classes for seniors in this instance. I don't see what the difference is with...
You have no point of order, Councillor.
You mean ask what the point of order is?
Well,
you
talk...
I think he's got to say it.
Okay, what's your point of order, Councillor Parry?
You already
What
made
is
a
your point of order?
decision out of this, so what's the point of raising this?
I heard nothing
I'm sorry,
in
no, that's
Councillor...
quite rude.
Well, okay, get on with it.
No, just keep going, why not?
Do you want to make a point of order or not?
Just keep going, Councillor.
Continue, thanks to Councillor Kylie. You've got another 25 seconds.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, this is, it's not about giving benefit to one particular area of the community. We have to try and find those areas in the community that actually need our assistance, and this is one group that I think can benefit from them. I don't see a huge turnout for such things, but again, just bear in mind, this is just for a report. Let's see what it comes back with. It was only a report previously when it failed at council previously. I'd really like to have a look at that report and actually see what it says, so please back this motion.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion. Question, Councillor Henderson.
Councillor Coley mentioned a number of activities held at some of the pools. Whilst those activities are underway, do we exclude others from the area?
I think that'll have to be part of the report, Councillor.
No, I'm referring to what we do now. That he suggested that we have these activities. Do we exclude others during those activities?
Well, I think that would be more a question to Councillor McCulloch. It's her motion.
That was my point of order, Mr Mayor.
I could answer that, Mayor, if you like.
Where you raised the order, Councillor Kylie was talking about senior active classes. So unless you're going to make a point of order on a different matter, and I invited you to continue. No, I did invite you to continue, Councillor Parry, and you decided not to. So who do you wish your question directed to?
Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to answer it by saying we cater for a range of groups. We don't necessarily exclude, but we cater for different groups.
Thank you for the clarification, because that's what I really want.
Right.
There's no exclusion.
Anyone wish to debate for or against the motion?
Actually, I would like to against. And the reason why I'd like to debate against it is because actually, as a woman and as a feminist who's believed in, women being equal to men and having striven for that for the whole of my life, I think inclusivity is actually what we are supposed to be achieving in our society. And I understand, and I really do understand, that people want to separate themselves off into exclusive kind of little pockets. But unfortunately, that is not the basis of our society. That is not what we have been striving toward as women for the last 50 years. And I can see that it's well-meaning, but actually it's actually misguided. Because, you see, I'm a woman, but I also have a son. And my son cannot go swimming with me in those particular sessions. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're using ratepayers' money, women and men's ratepayers' money, to provide these facilities. We are not actually in a position to start excluding people from those facilities. And that is the basis of our society, and that's what I've striven for the whole of my life, and I'll continue to do so, even though it is not, shall I say, is the word culturally... No. PC. Yes, PC. And, you know, yes, PC. Sometimes it can go too far, and in this instance, we've reached the line, I believe. Thank you.
Any other speakers, councillors? For or against? Councillor Congdon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm actually going to speak for the motion. Previously I did speak against the motion, but I'm going to talk for the motion, and I'm really going to recount on the fact that it states to prepare a report. And more importantly for me, there's a couple of things that we're going to hear about in this report of how the facilities would enable different cultures to use the facilities, but also the financial implications that may be involved in remodelling, reworking, re-employing additional employers, and everything else that goes along with making a facility part-way exclusive rather than inclusive.
Thank you, Councillor Congdon. Any other speakers? Councillor Kiley.
Just a question, Mayor. We've heard from Councillor Congdon that it was to do with different cultures, and I just can't see that in the motion at all. And also we've heard from Councillor Parry that it was to do with different religions as well. I haven't seen that in the motion. I'm just seeing whether...
It's in the reasons, Councillor.
Reasons, okay. Thank you.
Councillor Kiley, and it's mentioned in debate by Councillor McCulloch. I'll ask again, are there any other speakers for or against? Councillor Johnson, I saw your hand first.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm actually going to speak for it, but I'm going to suggest something I'd like the staff to consider. It's not in the motion, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think the motion's interesting. The report will be good. I think that one of the things that needs to happen is that in these wellness sessions, I'm looking particularly at the multicultural word under reason, we need to give consideration to cultural adaptation. So assisting people who are don't feel that they fit into a swimming pool that both men and women are in at the same time, then I think these classes could help prepare people for that, prepare women for it. So actually, in Australia, it's quite normal. It's the normal thing to do. Don't worry about it. I think there could be an element of that in it, so I'd like that maybe the staff could consider that. It's a little bit like when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So, you have to go, oh, yeah. And I've been trying to think of an example. Of course, obviously, I'm a bloke. This is swimming pools. It's a completely different thing. I'm trying to think, where have I seen culture shock that I've come across? So the most benign one I can think of is in the world of volunteer firefighting, where my brigade 12 years ago was all blokes, and we had, I think, there's generally one female. But now my current brigade is 50-50, but we still have only one changing room. Well, we've got used to that, councillors. It's about cultural adaptation and adapting to the fact that everybody's in there together. So councillors, I suggest this motion can be supported, but I'd like to see the staff including elements of cultural adaptation and support and reorientation in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. I'm in support of this motion. I'm in a halfway situation where I'm happy to support these women who've come from different multicultural backgrounds and religions, whereby we understand that they have traditionally grown up with different ideals of what they're comfortable with and not. And predominantly it might be women from an older generation. When it comes to domestic violence, for us to be able to provide those classes within that safe space. Yes, that's something we'd like to support. Obviously, domestic violence with work, we hope to bring more publicity to that and decrease that. So the need for maybe those potential classes might not be there in the future. But currently, we have a group of women who fall into this umbrella who would like these sessions with domestic violence, with body issues, with more discussions. I would like to see councillors involved in more discussion before this or when the report comes back to council, to look at how we can bring those classes back to the current now. We have junior primary students who are learning to integrate little female and male primary school students who swim together. I am concerned then that we will set somewhat of a pattern whereby they then get to a teenage where they stop swimming in high school together, and then they continue to go down that path of following perhaps those sessions, but they still will be available, but looking at how we can incorporate maybe an old concept of different cultures that have those views is quite a tricky PC issue, but where it's explored that the younger generation are integrated into Australian culture and activities. Thank you.
Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to speak also for the motion. I think that this is something that the city can do. I don't think it's going to be particularly onerous, providing a couple of sessions. We have a substantial multicultural society living within the city, and I think it's almost a safety issue as well. If females from a particular background feel that they can't get into a swimsuit to learn to swim, and bear in mind a lot of women coming from some of these overseas countries, they can't swim, then I think that's something that we need to bear in mind. So yes, I will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. I'm in a bit of a flux. I don't know if I'm speaking for it or speaking against it, but I think it's really a question maybe for Councillor McCulloch, and it's that one that sort of sticks out like a sore thumb, being 2021 and a very gender-fluid kind of world that we live in. How do you see non-binary and trans people fitting into the report, please?
This is specifically entailed for women's wellness, and if that's another consideration for someone or a councillor and another motion at another time, then I would believe that that's another aspect to be discussed. Definitely.
Any other councillors? Thank you. I'm going to hand the chairmanship to Councillor Congdon. Councillors, you may recall that I did not support the motion when it last came before council. I thought it was a much more poorly worded motion, and originally it was for the whole day. I would support a report coming back for a further consideration, but I need to make sure that everyone understands currently we only have 2 leisure centres open. Midland is shut down for approximately 2 years. Most of the users at Midland are now coming to Swan Active Beachborough, and Balladura is a smaller facility, and both are almost maxed out. Both Councillor Parry and I declared a impartiality interest because we're both members. So I don't know how many other councillors regularly attend the leisure centres that are currently open. I try and get there 3, sometimes 4 or 5 days a week. I can tell you now there are many multicultural women and men that go to the different centres, and there is differences between Balladura and Beachborough. Balladura has a separate library, has almost a separate gym, where if you go to Beachborough, you must go in through the one entrance to get to the library, to get to the basketball courts, to go to the toy library, and quite often I see young fathers there at the toy library with their children. There's also caregivers with people with disabilities in the pool, both male and female people suffering from disabilities. So I think the report will have to be quite comprehensive, and the reason I'm supporting it is I do support people, particularly from different cultural backgrounds, having the opportunity of learning to swim. Many women who go currently to the pool are dressed in head-to-toe garments anyhow, as are their children who go to school swim lessons, mixed up with boys with board shorts and Speedos on. Kids are innocent. Parents address them appropriately how they wish to see them. So I think there's a lot of other issues. Does it mean that no one can access the library or the basketball courts or the gymnasium? You have to go in through the same entry. So at what level do women who may wish to access this program, can they see a man in the car park? What age limit does a boy have to be? So I think this is going to be a very comprehensive report, but I'm also concerned, as Councillor Congdon pointed out, on the financial implications. Do we then exclude current members who might want to go there during the day, because that's when they normally go, during their normal time, when they're not on a shift work, or they might be then working a day shift and want to go in the evening. So although I support the motion to get the report, my preference would be that any of these sessions should actually occur outside the normal operating hours, so it doesn't impact on any of the current members. So we can be more inclusive and still not exclude current members. So I think all those things, Mr Coaten, if you're doing the report, need to be taken into consideration. Or Mr Bishop, he's not here tonight, so thank you, Ms Summers. Thank you. Being no further people indicating, Councillor McCulloch, did you someone have a question? Oh, sorry, Mr CEO. I'm going to call you Councillor Edwards.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just for a bit of clarification, this report is going to be fairly comprehensive. Logistically, it is going to be a fair bit of work for staff to actually pull this together. And as you were just talking there was a lot more other things that were coming up that I'm thinking about that actually needs to be included into it. So as much clarity as we can get from Council in relation to what you expect within the report would be really beneficial, so that when we bring it back, we can meet your expectations. And that's why on the financial implications, I wasn't trying to be dismissive, but do you want direct costs, indirect costs? Do you want opportunity costs? If we're shutting the centre down, then there's additional costs on top of that. This is a large piece of work, so some further clarity around some of the expectations would be really good, and also an expectation as to when the report could come back by, because this is probably not dissimilar to Midland Junction. We could be a good 4 to 6 months in getting the report ready, if it's going to encompass all of the things that I think that we've picked up around the table in terms of what you want within the report.
Thank you. Any questions come out of that comment? Councillor Kiley.
Through you, Mayor, to the CEO, surely there's other councils have done this throughout Australia, and there might be reports we could get our hands on, have a look at. I'm hoping we can do that to take some shortcuts, possibly.
I think the City of Swan is unique. As I said, there's vast differences between our two leisure centres now. One's got a standalone library and gym, the other one's combined into the one centre where it's got one access point, and you have to go past the toy library and the normal library to get to further in. So, Councillor McCulloch, you have 3 minutes for your right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, as a few councillors did question whether it was operating or after operating hours, and I did include that at the end in my motion. Some interesting aspects and comments. I think understanding more about individual religions and cultures lends understanding to even many of the questions that have been posed here this evening. So myself included, over the past years, as I've been working with different multicultural communities in our local areas, has lent greater understanding for me in looking at this motion. We have very few, if any, women's-only gyms that are private businesses. So again, for our local government to be providing or facilitating an aspect of not only swimming is very beneficial. And I think as a local government, that's something that we can lead the way in. People have spoken about the costs and the financial detriment. These are our residents and ratepayers also. And I was a little gobsmacked to kind of go, what? They would be full fee paying members also. And as Ms Cave mentioned last week, they may even, with the numbers with the programs, maybe increase revenue potential. We looked at definitions of egalitarianism. Yeah, all people are equal and they deserve equal rights and opportunities. The people we welcome across our borders and our seas who have frameworks and established religion that dictates to them what they do and how they do it.
You have 1 minute left,
them
thank you.
From what we see. So that is something that is really important. Inclusivity is our ultimate goal. This is not an exclusive, no. We need to be looking at the specific and sensitive issues of some of these women, whether it is religion, and they can't remove a headdress in the presence of a man, so they can't go to the pool. Ratepayers, yes, to provide for facilities, they're ratepayers as well. What are we doing? Discriminating against another group? Let's actually look at including all of our ratepayers. Cultural adaptation, it's not always possible due to religion. For some women, we're talking about fear, domestic violence and such. That's a process. It's something that they may move through, and these sessions will actually help that. So, councillors, please, this report will take time, but the time taken for the report will be worthwhile. Some of our leisure centres may be back on track and line, and we can look at the dynamics and activations and make decisions from there as to what fits. Councillors, please consider this. Please look further ahead, and I'm sure we can find a way.
Thank you. I'm now going to put it to the vote. Those councillors in favour. I have Councillor Bowman, Pradovnik, Johnson, Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Richardson and Councillor McCulloch. I declare the motion carried with 2 councillors against, being Councillor Catalano and Councillor Parry. The motion's passed, which takes us to the next item on the agenda, C1.9, Councillor Catalano, Lloyd Street Bridge.
Yes, thank you. Okay, that council resolved to, 1, take all necessary steps to stop the clearing of trees and vegetation and infilling on the Helena River floodplain for the Lloyd Street Bridge until the final bridge design has been endorsed by Council. And I've got a second point that I'd like to be voted on separately, if that's what you want to call it. The second one is include the Helena River Alliance and traditional owners in progressing the bridge design to finalisation. And the reasons, I think, are already there. So I have got a question I'd also like to ask.
Well, perhaps I'll ask for a seconder first, Councillor Catalano, of your amended motion.
The reasons are there or not, are they? There you go. Do you want me to read the reasons out? Reasons for the motion. Council should make the decision about the final bridge design before these works commence to ensure it meets the requirements of the City of Swan, who are the responsible authority for and will be the future owners of the bridge, meets the expectations of the community in respect of the impact on environmental and cultural values in the Helena River floodplain, And I'm quite happy to, if you're confused about, sorry, just go back up to those reasons. Thanks. If you're concerned about meets the requirements of the City of Swan, who will be the future owners of the bridge, I think that's fairly clear. Make the final design about the bridge design for these works commence and ensure. So that will be the design in terms of it. Okay, so I have got some questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Are you seconding the motion?
Yes.
You've got questions, Councillor Catalano?
Yes. My question is who in the City of Swan, is it the CEO or the Mayor or is it the Council that has the authority to transfer ownership of this bridge to the state government?
Well, I'll have a go at answering it, but I'm sure Mr Coaten will correct me. I don't believe anyone in the City of Swan has got the power or the authority to transfer this bridge. I think you'll find that the Minister for Planning and Transport has the power to take it out of our control.
Okay, but I think the question was, if the City of Swan was to transfer it to the state government, would that be, who's going to make that decision?
I think the letter we received from the Minister, she has made the decision to make it a state road and take ownership and responsibility out of the City of Swan's hands. So it's not our decision, it's hers.
Well, yes, okay. That was that she said she had an intention to do that, But was that intention that she was going to then, the state government was going to take ownership of it?
That's what the letter clearly said, yes.
So it was an intention. Okay.
Well,
right. The word was intention. Thank you.
Well, I'll just clarify that. Because there is a process that must be followed, which may take between 6 and 9 months, and Mr Coaten may have more information, but there is a process to be followed. She just can't do it overnight, but she intends to do that and will carry through the process and take ownership out of the City of Swan's responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that, because that then alters now my motion. Because my motion now is that the council resolve to take all necessary steps to stop the clearing of trees and vegetation and infilling on the Helena River floodplain for the Lloyd Street Bridge until the state government, the Minister of Transport, has commenced.
Councillor Catalano to finish.
Hang on a second. Commenced the process of taking ownership of the bridge.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. I have a mover and a second for the motion that you read out. I've got to deal with that motion. As the mover of the motion, you cannot amend it. So I've got a valid motion before us, councillors, and that's what we'll be debating. Speakers, Mr CEO, you had a comment?
Through you, Mr Mayor, just to clarify some of the discussion in the opening address by Councillor Catalano, I've just pulled up the letter in front of me that we received from the Minister, and just a couple of points of clarification. Within the letter it says, whilst Lloyd Street remains under the care and control of the City. So at this point in time, it remains under the care and control of the City. And in the final paragraph, it states, given the importance of this road to improve road safety, including the movement of freight, the State intends to commence the necessary process to make it state road as soon as possible. So currently at this point in time, it's under the City's control. The State has indicated an intent.
Thank you. I believe that is what I read in the letter, and that was my original question. And then the answer I got was, in fact, oh no, the state's going to take it over. So no, we need to be quite clear about what is going to be happening with this bridge. You know, I mean, and I think you've made that point.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. If you can resume your seat, I'll listen to the point of order.
Is Councillor Catalano opening debate, or is she still asking questions, or what?
I'll ask her.
It's trying to clarify where we're at this stage.
So she's
and
asking-
Point of order,
asking a
Mr Mayor.
question.
I'm sure you're the presiding member, not Councillor Catalano.
She's asking a question. Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
And I believe that has been answered by the CEO. Thank you for that.
I'll ask, is there anyone against the motion? There is. Do you wish to debate it?
Wish to move an amendment.
What would be your amendment? And I'll see if it's acceptable to the mover and the seconder.
Delete the word final and replace with concept.
I'll just wait till it's on the board to see if it's agreeable to the mover and the seconder. Councillor Catalano, Councillor Kiley, is that agreeable to you?
It's to me, Mayor.
Councillor Catalano, I'd like you to look at me, not members in the public gallery.
Actually, it's not acceptable to me, sorry.
Thank you. Well then, do I have a seconder for the amendment? I do. Do you wish to debate it, councillors, or do you just want me to put it straight to the vote?
Got a question.
Question, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, through you to Mr Coaten. Could Mr Coaten explain the stages that the design would go through, and give us a brief outline of what each one is?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, there is a little bit of an explanation in the officer comment. At the moment, the design that was presented to Council by Main Roads at the briefing session recently was the concept design. And so from there, further and further detail is added to the design. So it goes to a 15% design stage, an 85% design stage, and then a 100% design stage, and then it's issued for construction. So each stage of the design includes design reviews along the way, and it includes more and more detail along the way.
Satisfied, Councillor Johnson? Councillor Brodovnik, you have a question?
Sorry, can I just confirm, does that come to Council at every stage?
That's not what's intended to occur, depending on the outcome of the motion. The outcome of the motion at the moment is for the final design, or the 100% design, to come to Council for approval. The alternative or the amendment proposed by Councillor Bowman would mean that the concept comes to Council for approval.
Just so that I'm clear, there seems to be stages in the concept. So is every stage of the concept coming to Council?
There's stages of the design, and the first stage of the design is the concept design. And so at the moment there's no stages coming to Council, proposed to come to Council. What Councillor Catalano's motion is proposing is that the final design come to Council, and the amendment is that the word final be replaced with concept. So the concept design is essentially available now. That could potentially come to the February meeting if Council resolved the final design won't be available for some time.
Question, Councillor Catalano?
No, not a question. I would like to speak to that motion, to that amendment.
Okay. I'll first ask the mover if he wishes to speak to the amendment, if you're against.
Mr Mayor, just really quickly, I agree that Council should be responsible for endorsing the plan. I believe it should only be the concept plan. The concept plan, we've seen one, it's changed already, and I'd hope that between now and when we get that concept plan there may be further changes. If Council's not happy with that concept plan, we do not have to vote for it as well, and that's the reason I'm just changing it from final to concept.
Thank you. The second would like to speak.
I reserve my right, Mr.
Thank you. Speaker against the amendment, Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you. The most important part of my motion here is that there is no clearing of trees and vegetation or infilling of the Helena River floodplain for the Lloyd Street Bridge until and that's the most important part. The thing is that a concept plan, it's my understanding that the concept plan was already going to be ready by February, so nothing changes. And in fact, the reason why this is being put forward in my view, is that it enables the floodplain to be, for those trees to be chopped down and for the fill to go onto the floodplain so that the construction, the dare I say, the people constructing the bridge can then analyse and look at how all that infill will settle over the winter months, given that these are very soft clay soils underneath. And that means that my motion is defeated already. The thing is, this motion is about protecting the environmental values, the cultural values of that area until the final design is brought to council, because until we have that final design, we cannot be sure that those very precious environmental and cultural values should not, or indeed should have to be, destroyed for this bridge. And I've got to say, at this stage, even by February, I do not believe that this council will be fully informed enough to make that decision, because to date we still not have seen the Jacobs report. But my guess is that most of the intersections that this traffic will be flowing into from Hazelmere, those intersections are already a fail. That's my guess, just from looking at previous traffic studies done, and that's done a long time ago, back in 2014. And that's why I haven't seen the traffic study, and I don't believe we'll see the traffic study before February. And what we will have is a concept plan in February to clear that vegetation and infill that floodplain, which is contrary to my motion here. I'm saying that we need to recognise and respect all the efforts that our community has made to make us aware of this issue. We also need to respect that our community, in their consultation regarding the strategic community plan, have ranked environment right there at the top, that they're prepared to invest money into the natural environment over all other areas. And I'm saying that what we need to do is we need not to rush through with this, but we need to be respectful, responsible, and maintain the cultural and environmental values until we know what we're doing. And I say this council knows what we're doing, because we are still owners of this bridge, and until the state government takes it over, it is our responsibility, and we are responsible for any cultural, any damage, any kind of mistakes that are made down there. We cannot be rushed into it. We cannot be forced into it. This is not a motion about stopping the bridge. This is a motion about being responsible citizens, global citizens. And I do believe that we will actually bring our whole council into disrepute if we go ahead and push ahead with this. I believe the community will be angry. I believe it'll go far further than this small little pocket of the world.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. That's your 5 minutes. Speaker for the amendment, Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, we're lucky in this state. We've got an absolute disaster on our hands within the state with the Juukan Gorge. We've got some precedent here. We can learn a lesson out of what's happened in our state. And
sorry, Councillor Cole, are you speaking to the amendment or against
absolutely.
the amendment?
Absolutely, yes or no? I am for the amendment.
Thank you.
I think the point about the Juukan Gorge is that we have something to learn from, but unfortunately the parliamentary report into the disaster that was the Juukan Gorge explosion, or whatever you want to call it, it only came out in December this year, as far as I can see. head of the report, December 2020. So I'm a little bit behind there, but I'd like the opportunity to read that report fully and understand the implications of going ahead and ruining some important Indigenous site before we go ahead and decide on this. I would feel that the word concept would carry us over tonight to February, and that's better than losing tonight. And I encourage councillors to possibly get on board with the word concept for the moment, even if it does just take us through to February. At least we get a second shot at it. We get a chance to read more and understand more of the issues. So I encourage you to accept the amendment for the moment and then bring it back to council, if maybe in February, maybe in March. It's better than losing tonight completely. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Howlett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm against the amendment because Councillor Catalano's motion is about the final bridge design being endorsed by council. I think that's the important word as I see it, before any clearing of the site occurs. Until the final design is approved by council, there really is no need for any site clearing. Any pre-clearing would be premature because there is no true knowledge of the final design's actual footprint. This is our bridge, councillors, it's our design and it's our legacy. Let's just get it right. We know the community want better, and let's do our best to get it right. So I don't support the amendment, no.
Thank you. Speaker for the amendment. Any other speakers for or against the amendment? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, councillors, I'm very definitely against this amendment. The idea that the concept stage is the appropriate time to determine whether to go ahead with the clearing is completely and utterly wrong. And the reason for that is we already have not one, but we have two concept designs. In the briefing, we were shown the new concept design, and there's another concept design as well that preceded that. At the concept stage of a project, there isn't one concept design, there are multiple concept designs. As you are developing an idea for a project, you may go through multiple options. That is the purpose of the concept stage, to examine and consider different design solutions to this particular problem where we need a bridge. We may see more concepts, and we need more concepts. We need concepts for a longer bridge with a longer span that has a lesser environmental impact. If we were to make this amendment now, Councillor Catalano's motion, I think, would be almost completely meaningless, because we've already got a concept design that Main Roads thinks is the right one. Okay, we haven't approved it, but it's simply too early. Remember, councillors, I actually don't know how long it takes to design a bridge, but maybe I could ask that question right now. Mr. Cohen, how long would it take to get to the final design stage?
Well, that question was asked of Main Roads at the briefing, and they didn't give a definitive answer, but it would likely be in the latter part of next year, so
Yeah.
that's 9 to 12 months to get to the final design stage.
Okay. So, and I think we all know how long it takes to chop down 118 trees. I guess that could be done in a couple of days. So, councillors, the concept stage is far too soon.
Councillor Johnson, I think you're aware there's only 64 trees now set for removal, not 118.
Oh, that's the two concepts you see, Mr. Mayor. 64.
No, the latest concept is for 64.
Concept number 2, concept number 1 is about 120. I think it was 118. There may be more concepts, and that's what we're looking for. So, councillors, what we want to do on this project, we want to progress through a series of concepts, select one concept which is the best one, move to the, is it the 15%, then the 85%, then the 100% design stage. And what Councillor Catalano is saying, we want certainty of the design before we remove any trees, because it's going to take us about 10 months to get to the final design stage, and then it's going to take 2 days to chop the necessary trees down. So why do we have to chop the trees down in February or sometime like that? So I'm saying wait until we understand what the design is, And then we proceed with the execution of the design, and unfortunately part of the execution of the design will be to remove some trees. But we don't need to remove the trees until we know absolutely for certain what trees we want to remove, because frankly, sadly, that's the easy part of this. So councillors, the amendment, I don't believe it's almost completely contrary to the motion, to be honest, because Councillor Catalano's intention is to protect the trees, and by waiting until the final design, we've provided the greatest possible protection to the trees to ensure we've selected the design that removes the least possible trees, and those unfortunate trees that have to go together with the birds that live in them. We know we've removed the correct and the smallest number of trees. So councillors, please oppose this amendment for the reasons I've given. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Then Councillor Bowman, you're right to reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've heard in debate that nothing changes with this amendment. Well, that's completely wrong. Right now, they have a clearing permit. They can go in tomorrow with the bulldozers. Take all necessary steps to stop the clearing of trees and vegetations. I totally agree with that. We have not approved a concept plan. Yes, we've got 2 concept plans. The second one was better than the first one. We're getting there. Perhaps we can get there a little bit more. 118 trees, 64 trees. We don't know yet because the concept plan has not been endorsed by council. We're rushing. We don't know if this report's going to come to us in February. It might be March, April, May. I'm not sure when the concept plan will be ready. We don't have to approve the concept plan. As council, we're taking the role away from the administration, and as council, we're actually making that decision. If we do not like that concept plan, we do not have to approve it. Let me just repeat that again. If we do not like that concept plan, because for whatever reason, we do not have to approve it. I'm all for making improvements. And I think we need to ask for the concept plan, see if we're happy with it, and then we decide from there what we do.
Thank you. We're now voting on the amendment, councillors, which is to delete the word final, replace with the word concept. Those in favour? Of Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Parry, myself, Councillor Congdon, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Bowman. The amendment is passed and becomes part of the, or is the substantial motion now. Against were Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson, just so it's recorded. So with the motion as amended, are there any other speakers? You'd like to... Well, it's not my motion any longer. You've already spoken. It's your motion, councillor, as amended. You started the debate, so you can have your right to reply at the right time. Any other speakers for or against the motion, councillors?
Amendment, Mr Mayor.
What's your amendment, Councillor Johnson?
I'll need to ask a question first, Mr Mayor, before I pose my amendment. Could Mr Coaten give us again the design stages that we've got? We've got concept, we've got 100%. What were the ones in between?
I think 15, 85.
15 and 85. Okay, in that case, my amendment is to... can I see the motion up there? So I think what we've got is concept, so I want to delete the word concept and replace with 85% design.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. If that was the intention, should have been an amendment to the amendment.
I don't agree. I'm sorry.
I'll just seek some clarification from our governance officer. Did you get the gist of the question? Thank you, Ms Albrecht.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, I think so. So the Council has just debated an amendment about whether or not to use the word final or concept design. If the Council had wanted to change that word to 85% concept design, the time to have done that would have been during the debate of that amendment.
I can't agree with that, Mr Mayor.
Well, I know you disagree, Councillor Johnson, but that's my ruling.
Look, Mr Mayor, that is simply wrong.
Well,
so I'll need
if
to
you
move.
wish to dissent against that ruling...
I'm going to dissent against that. It's incorrect, otherwise.
Well, okay, thank you. You're seconding it, Councillor Catalano. Yes. Those in favour of the dissent motion? I have Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Richardson and Councillor Knight. Is your hand up or down, Councillor Prodovnik?
I've got a question.
Well, we're taking a vote. So the dissent motion is lost. So the motion as amended stands. Are there any other speakers for or against on now the substantive motion? Councillor.
My right as a second mayor to talk to it.
Thank you. You didn't speak before.
Councillors, I'll just correct myself from my previous discussion. October 21 was when the final Duke and Gorge report came out, and in that it talks about there's a number of recommendations there. I'd like to have that opportunity to take this through to at least February. I'm concerned that if I would like to endorse Councillor Bowman's amendment in that this will give us the opportunity in...
Point of order. Haven't we finished debating the amendment?
This will give us the...
Yes, he's talking to the substantive motion before us now.
This will give us the opportunity to take it through to February, March, April or May, as Councillor Bowman pointed out. And as he rightly pointed out, this gives us the opportunity then to refuse it if it comes to Council at that point. We do not have to accept it when it comes to Council in February or March or April or May or June, as he pointed out. I encourage you to support Councillor Catalano's motion and let's move forward so we can look at a design early in the new year, but it will give us over the Christmas period to read this report. It will for me anyway, and understand fully the issues and the implications. I am also aware the cost to Rio Tinto has been in excess of $250 million compensation paid to the Indigenous people of that area. $250 million. I've only mentioned it about 5 or 6 times, Councillor, so if you're not up to speed on it, then...
I'm just asking the relevance, Councillor Kyle.
The parliamentary inquiry into the Duke and Gorge, disaster, I suppose. Destruction, that's the word. It came out, it's available on the internet right now. It came out in October. The final report came out in October 21. So I suggest there's 8 recommendations in that. Some very important recommendations for us to consider. Given that it is our road, it is our river, we need to consider the implications of that. And I go again back to the cost to Rio Tinto has been in excess of $250 million. So we have to consider, as the responsible authority in this area, the responsible local government, what this ultimately might cost us if we are found to be negligent in approving a bridge or an infill of a floodplain which has significance to the Indigenous people of the area. It's really an important issue. I encourage you to support Councillor Catalano's motion with the amendment, and then let's get this looked at again early in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? A question, Councillor Howlett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is my question to staff as 2 quick questions. One is, who gives the final bridge approval? Is it Council?
Mr Coaten.
Well, I think that's what's being debated. The motion as it stands at the moment is that the concept would come to Council for approval, so the final approval wouldn't come to Council.
Thank you. And one more question is the Greater Connect Alliance, it states in the officer's comment, have obtained a native vegetation clearing permit. So who can consent the clearing to be undertaken before a final design is approved? Is that a count that's not up to Council?
They've got the clearing permit, so as was mentioned earlier, I think by Councillor Bowman, that they can go and do it immediately.
Thank you.
Any other questions or debate? Councillor Henderson.
Questions, if I may. Probably Mr Coaten. The land that's got to be filled with the ramp, how long would that need to be established for it to stabilise? Is it a long period of time? Is that one of the reasons to get some fill into the area to be able to stabilise the road surface?
Yes, it would need a period of preloading or consolidation, and so that would again sort of typically be perhaps 9 to 12 months.
So 9 or 12 months. So if we were to effectively delay the placement of that ramp before winter, that could potentially delay us another year?
Well, however long the placement was delayed for, that would be how long the project would be delayed for, yes.
So you wouldn't be doing that ramp during winter, I imagine?
I think that question was asked at the briefing as well, and the Main Roads indicated that could be done at any time.
Okay, I wasn't at the briefing, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I see another hand over here for questions? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. My question, Mr Mayor, through you to Mr Coaten, is really, I think it's slipped my mind at the moment. I think I've forgotten my notes. How many concept plans would we like to see? We've got 2 at the moment. What's the process for getting more concepts?
Well, they get obviously refined. I haven't spoken to Main Roads in terms of exactly where they're up to, but I would suggest that the one that was presented to council would be, close to being at the concept stage. But I haven't actually spoken to them and asked them that question deliberately. But I would suggest that that is quite close to being.
What's the step to get a different concept? Do we obviously pass a resolution at council asking them to do another concept that meets our expectations?
Yeah, I think that would be required. Yes.
Councillor Howlett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in relation to point 2 of the motion, how that would take effect considering point 1 of the motion relates to the concept bridge design being endorsed, and obviously we don't make the final decision anymore on the design.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't. No, I thought Mr Coaten said that we make a decision on the concept but not the final design.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so therefore, how does point 2 fit into the motion? Because the point 2 says includes the Helena River Alliance and traditional owners in progressing the bridge to its finalisation. However, we as a council are only going to be progressing it through to the final or the concept.
Yeah, well, the design will still progress through to final stage, so the fact that council's not approving it at each of those stages doesn't stop it progressing. I would see that, and again, that's the first I've seen that's part 2 tonight, so I'd have to talk to Main Roads about it, but I believe that it's subject to Main Roads agreeing, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. They could involve, with their agreement, they could involve the Helena River Alliance and the traditional owners at stages of the design along the way, but I can't speak for Main Roads, but I think from a practical perspective, I think it could be done.
Any other questions, councillors? Any other debate on the motion before us? Question, Councillor Catalano?
No, I want to make a statement.
Well, I'm sorry, you don't make statements. This is debate time.
Well, I want to make a debate then.
Well, you've already had your...
I actually haven't debated this actual motion.
You did. You started the debate off.
No, I started the amendment. No. I actually debated the amendment. I did,
not
because the opposer, in fact, brought in an amendment, and I haven't actually even spoken to this motion yet.
Definitely hasn't spoken.
No, I haven't. I have not.
I thought you had.
Well, I haven't.
If I'm incorrect, I apologise.
That's fine.
But normally, the mover speaks first. And
well, I know, but that's your mistake.
No, well,
because I didn't get a chance to speak.
I'm just checking with the minute clerk.
In fact, the amendment came in before I even had a chance to have a speak. And
you just take a seat for a moment. I'll get it clarified. Has Councillor Catalano spoken to her amendment? And is it...
No, to my original motion, thank you.
And is she allowed to speak now? if she didn't speak at the start of the
So, Mr Mayor, just conferred, we don't recall Councillor Catalano opening the debate on the original substantive motion and it moving to Councillor Bowman on the amendment, which Councillor Catalano did participate in, but she hasn't spoken to the original one, had an opening debate on that.
Thank you. Well, with that clarification, Councillor Catalano, you've 5 minutes.
Thank you for that. I mean, I can see that there's a hell of a lot of rush on this project. I mean, we can't even stick to our meeting procedures and do things in the right manner. So this is looking very ominous.
Can you explain that
excuse
comment,
me.
Councillor Catalano?
What I mean is, I didn't even get a chance to speak to my original motion. In fact, my motion now has been changed, and the final
you would have had the opportunity to speak to your original motion.
Anyway, I didn't get a chance to speak to it. That's a fact. There's no point of order there. And I would have normally been given the chance to speak to my motion, just like everybody else does when they put up a motion. That didn't happen. So there's obviously some real importance to rush this through. And, yes, it may be that if we've got to delay things for another year, it's been delayed for 30 years. It's been delayed for 30 years already. I mean, it's already, I saw it talked about in the charrette. That goes back to 1990s. And it's probably as old as I am, this whole concept. All of a sudden, we've got to rush through. And yet we've got all these really important issues to consider. The community, the response, the environmental values, the cultural values that we've heard so much about. We need to be very responsible in the way we tackle this. It's really just rushing it through is not going to make it any more palatable when that floodplain is filled in with infill, because we've rushed through to a concept stage, because we've got to rush this through this year or else. Why? It's been decades in the pipeline. And do you know, the other thing that really gets me about this bridge is nobody has actually really explained to me what its purpose is. And that's a fact. Nobody has actually sat down and explained to me what the purpose of this bridge is. And I noticed in the Minister's letter, she talks about freight. And I just do not understand how freight is going to go over that bridge and end up at the Clayton Street intersection and go anywhere. I just do not understand it. And that's why I want to see the traffic report, I want to see the Jacobs traffic report. I want to understand what this bridge is supposed to do. Because other people have said to me it's about 16,000 cars, or is it 30,000 cars? Where are they coming from? And why would they want to end up at that intersection, that Clayton Street intersection? And where are they going to go to? I mean, it's just, is that all going to be available when the concept design comes in? Or is this just going to be rushing this through and we end up with, the next Duke and Gorge on our hands? I mean, it's serious. It really is serious, councillors. I mean, we're not even joking. This is serious. And it's not about sparring in chambers or, I'm going to be... It's serious stuff about, the future of our children, our grandchildren, our grandchildren's children. I mean, the future of our existence on this planet. And yet, no, this bridge has to happen this year or else we're in trouble. What kind of trouble? What kind of trouble? It's only been decades that I've known about. In fact, why is it? Because all of a sudden we've got to get on the coattails of main roads because they're doing these intersection upgrades. Is that it? It hasn't been properly explained to me. Is it going to be explained to me when the concept plan comes in? Or am I going to have to be forced to accept another compromise when that concept plan comes in and go, I suppose nothing we can do now, we just have to fill it in.
Thank you,
fill the floodplain in, cut the trees down and fill the floodplain in. What is behind this? What is behind it? Please explain. I'm a councillor. I've been asking questions for months and I haven't had the answers. All I know is there's a desperate rush to get that floodplain, those trees chopped down and that floodplain filled in. And I can only guess why. Because actually nobody knows how this bridge is going to work and how it's going to perform. And you know what? It's that old idea of, oh, well, you have to crack an egg to make an omelette. Hey, this isn't an omelette. This is not an omelette. This is a river floodplain. It's one of the last of the last. You know, it doesn't exist anywhere else. Flooded gums, Eucalyptus rudis. I'm telling you, why don't you just go and have a look and see where they are?
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. That's your 5 minutes. Thank you. If you just keep your comments to yourself. Any other speakers for or against the motion, councillors? Councillor Johnson.
Mr Mayor, obviously I'm in favour of the motion, even as amended. Mr Mayor, I think councillors must surely be aware that projects are subject to project management methodology, and in any good project management methodology there are what are called stage gates, and stage gates are about decision points. And you've heard Mr Coton talk about the engineering stages that they go through. I think it's concept, 15%, 85% final design. So those are the stages in design. And at each one of those points, there is a stage gate. There is a decision point, and the project board makes a decision whether they like the project in its current state, do they want to amend it, or do they change design, or do they want to agree to move forward to the next stage. What this motion gives us is the first control over the first stage gate. Any responsible governance organisation would take this step. It is the most reasonable motion from a project management perspective I can imagine, and I'm sure I won't bring the stuff into it, it's not fair. Councillors, this motion gives us control, and at that control point, we've already got 2 concepts to choose from. We can say, no, I don't like concept 2, I'd like to see concept 3 and 4. I want to see a longer bridge, a better bridge with a reduced environmental impact. We may discover that the ideal bridge is too expensive. Estimates are done at a high level, so we might change it. We want to come up with a bridge that meets the expectations of those who are planning the road, and also meets the expectation of the Helena River Alliance, who represent if you like, the river and the natural environment, and the traditional owners, who obviously have an interest in the river itself, and we heard all about that. So, councillors, this is an extraordinarily important motion. In fact, I'm sitting here and thinking it's got to be on a par with some. This must be possibly the most important motion I've seen on council. It is absolutely critical that we pass this. We have to take control of this, and right now, until it is taken off us, we have to be in charge and take control. So, councillors, we proceed assuming we are the custodians of this project. We are the governance body. We're in charge. So we absolutely have to have this stage. We have to have that concept. And what it means is, when we endorse the concept, that's the point at which we've selected the appropriate design, and then the engineers will advise us when is the appropriate time for the unfortunate trees to be removed. But it means it's our decision, and we've made the right decision. It just hasn't happened on autopilot or being asleep at the wheel. Now, councillors, in my time on this council, I've seen many important decisions where councillors have got up and spoken very eloquently in rational ways, explaining the reasons for their decisions. And then they discover that when it comes time to a vote, for the vote to be taken, that inexplicably they lose. And that people who have not spoken in debate have voted against those who have spoken. So what I say to you, councillors, if you're going to vote against this, you must speak. We want to hear your reasons, and they better be clear and rational. So if anyone's thinking of voting against this without speaking, I tell you, I'll want to know about it. The community will want to know about it.
Councillor Johnson.
And you'll be hearing from us.
Councillor Johnson.
Speak up. Needs to be done.
Councillor Johnson, it is up to each and every member of council whether they choose to enter debate or not. And I'll just warn you about the the tone of your voice and the nature of your comment. Thank you.
No, Mr Mayor, what I said was quite important.
And
there's no need to warn me about it. I said it in debate. There's no need to warn me.
It was the way that you said it.
No, it was done forcefully and powerfully for a really good reason.
Yes, thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Knight.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I'd just like to go on record that I'm going to support this motion. We've had petitions, loads of people have signed petitions. We've had loads of emails sent to us. One of the things that in our brainstorming workshop that we had recently as councillors, one of the things we identified was a pushback against state government. Isn't this an opportunity to do that? And to put our mark on this and make this. We've got to do what we can to protect this place. Councillor Catalano is absolutely right. I mean, this is for generations. This is a special place. And we must do what we can to protect our environment here. We've got the opportunity, so let's do it now, please.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Question, Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. Sorry, it's through you, Mr Mayor. It's just one more question relating to the vegetation clearing. I'm just wondering if this motion is passed, step one is to take all necessary steps, and I'm assuming that would be writing to the GCA stating no vegetation clearing to happen, because Mr Coton, I believe you sort of explained that they can do it whenever they want.
Yes, we would. That is correct. They can. They have. I have spoken to them, and they have indicated that they won't do anything until after the February meeting. But yeah, we certainly can write to them to reaffirm that if the motion passes.
Thank you.
Any other speakers for or against, councillors? Then I'll be speaking against the motion. But before I do, I have a question of Councillor Catalano. Could you please explain or define what all necessary to stop means, please?
What it means is you take all the necessary steps, so whatever it is that you've got to do, to stop the clearing of trees and vegetation and infilling until it's... what was the bit that you didn't understand? What those processes were?
Well, yes, I want you
to perhaps
define them
I could ask Mr Coton to define what exactly those steps are.
Well, it's your motion, Councillor Catalano. I'm asking you.
Okay. Then the first thing is to... I mean, you know, in some ways it's very unfair to expect me to do this because, to begin with, the motion was actually written by staff. And I assumed that they would understand what I wanted. And the other thing is, I'm not in control of the project, and I don't know what things are required to stop.
Mayor, maybe we could hear from the CEO on
this.
this.
I mean, this is really not my area to define it, and I think, in fact, perhaps you could help me along.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the motion that's before you is Councillor Catalano's motion. I mean, take all necessary steps. As Mr Coton has indicated in response to a previous question from another councillor, that would include things like writing to main roads and advising them and other stakeholders of the intent of the motion that, if passed by council tonight, goes through. And that's what we would do.
Can I ask another question then? Was there anything else that is involved in taking all necessary steps? Like, for instance, contractors have to be put on hold, or anybody else that's been engaged in the process that needs to, you know, just take a break?
In my discussions with the Main Roads and the project team, they indicated that if the matter goes to the February meeting for a decision, there's nothing planned for before then, so that won't hold up the project at all for the February meeting. If it's for March or April, then I imagine they'll probably come back to me with some of the implications about some of the impacts on the project.
Okay. Can I ask you one other final question then? So what other steps would be outstanding that we haven't discussed here tonight in defining necessary steps that would allow the clearing of vegetation or the infilling of the Helena River?
Yeah, I think the CEO answered that question pretty well earlier on.
And does that mean there's no others?
Well, through you, Mr Mayor, we don't want to enter into debate. I think we've answered the question in terms of the steps that we would take if this resolution was passed by Council tonight.
Okay, I just don't understand the nature of the question. So, I mean, I'm not in a position to answer it because I don't know what's involved, where you've got up to or anything. So that's why I need your assistance to help me with giving that information to the Mayor, because I am not... You know, it's unreasonable to expect me to provide that information. I mean, I'm not in that position. I wish I was, but I'm not, because I haven't been given that information. So that's why I'm asking you to provide that assistance, please.
Thank you.
Question, Mr Mayor.
Your question, Councillor Johnson.
You're asking Councillor Catalana to execute her own motion.
Well, I'm asking to explain or define what she means by all necessary steps.
No, you're asking her to do an execution, an administrative task. That's what the staff are here for. So, Councillor, the motion we're debating says, I can't see it.
Take all necessary steps.
Take all necessary steps. Well, that's something for the staff to decide. That's the motion we're debating. So, to take those necessary steps is execution. It's out of our control.
Mayor, given the time, can we move on, please?
Well, sorry, Councillor Kiley, I'm very aware of the time, but I'm going to end a debate. But I wanted to ask Councillor Catalano if she even understood her own motion, because ultimately she moved it. So I thought she would have had some understanding of what take all necessary steps meant. So I'll hand over to Councillor Congdon to chair the meeting. I've already started my stopwatch for 5 minutes. I'm also a bit... bewildered that Councillor Catalano said that she doesn't understand why we're building a bridge, but she can move a motion to stop it. So I thought a basic fundamental would be why has the city...
Point of order. Can I just give a point? I didn't say I didn't understand why. I said I didn't understand the purpose, and that was what I said. I didn't understand why. I said the purpose.
Well, could you clarify the difference between why and purpose?
Mr Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
Well, I'm going to ask a question.
No, there's no... The point of order is accepted. Please continue.
Well, can I ask a question to clarify what the difference between purpose and the other word she used? Because to
I
me
can
they're
answer
the
that
same.
because I explained it. I demonstrated what I meant when I said that I didn't understand whether it was going to be used for freight or whether it was going to be used for other traffic. I just did not understand how that road was going to be, the purpose, I said. So, in fact, I didn't, put any doubts on the bridge itself. I accept the bridge is going to be built. I just didn't understand the purpose.
So is that
sorry, I don't recall that part. I recall the part where you said you don't know why we need the bridge, which is what you said.
I meant, and I demonstrated that when I talked about, is it going to be for freight? And I said, I can't understand how trucks are going to use it. And then I was talking about cars, and I said I didn't understand what was the purpose. That's why I was confused as to what this bridge is for. What's the purpose?
I think, Mr Mayor, we need to move on.
Thank you. As part of my debate, I'll explain why the Lloyd Street Bridge extension is required. The extension of Lloyd Street will create a much-needed southern entry into Midland, providing improved access to the new hospital. This is how old this goes back. We're talking about a new hospital that's 5 years old, a future university. The university is there. And the developing entertainment precinct will also create direct links between Midland, Hazelmere, the industrial area, and Perth Airport. The City of Swan anticipates the extension would open up new industrial land, reduce the congestion and boost local employment opportunities. In the next advocacy booklet, it goes on to say Lloyd Street's southern extension will provide an alternative access into Midland and act as a major connector road to the primary and secondary road system, including to the Roe Highway, the Great Eastern Highway bypass and Abernethy Road. This important project will provide better access to the areas of the city as well as complement the existing regional road systems. It will improve access to those areas I've just said, but particularly to the police operations site, the proposed bulky goods retailing in adjacent Clayton Street, and to the existing future industrial areas in Hazelmere. So I hope you have a better reason for the purpose of the bridge. But at the end of the day, councillors, I don't support this motion, either before it was amended or not, because I think you're missing a major point. The Minister for Transport, the Planning Minister, has advised us as soon as possible she is taking this project away from the City of Swan. It will become a state road, it will become a state bridge, which will relieve us of all obligations of future maintenance for Lloyd Street and the Lloyd Street Bridge. I just don't understand what take all necessary steps mean. I thought the mover of the motion could have explained that in a comprehensive or a detailed way, but she put that back on the staff, and I don't think that's fair either because it's her motion. There's a lot of other environmental issues. So yes, we're concerned about the removal of perhaps 64 trees, 26 of which would have to be removed in any regard. Doesn't matter the nature of the design of the bridge, they are in the road way. But has anyone considered the CO2 emissions that 16,000 vehicles travelling or saving that 12 minutes a day? I've done the calculations. I can read them out to you if you want, but in a time of expediency, that's 198,000 minutes would be saved a day. Divided by 60, it's 3,300 hours per hour. Divided by 24 is 137 days of emissions saved every day by that very important infrastructure being built. If you take that 137.5 days, expand it by 364, it's over 50,000 days per year of saved emissions. Trees that in that floodplain area cannot absorb CO2 to the degree, and I'm happy for anyone to check my calculations later. I think the Minister has made it clear this project will no longer be ours, and I can't support the current motion before us, and I'll leave it there because I am also conscious of the time, Councillor Kiley, and we've got other items to deal with after this one. Thank you. Thank you. Your right of reply. Thank you, Councillor Catalano.
Okay, well, I mean, that takes some beating. You know, I tell you what, why don't we just, you know, just get rid of trees altogether and just build more roads? That will solve our CO2 problems. I mean, that's really out there. Anyway, never mind. Obviously, that's not going to work. That isn't going to work. We're not going to survive with more roads, with more roads and less trees. And the thing is, you know, probably those cars in 10 or 20 years' time are going to be electric anyway, so there's no CO2 emissions from cars in 20 years' time, or probably even less. And as for, how unreasonable of me to know what all the steps are to stop the clearing of trees. I mean, I am not involved in the process at all. I think it's fairly clear to a reasonable, ordinary person on the street that it means take all necessary steps. And I'll leave that then to staff to work out what those are, because that's their job. It's not my job to interfere or even get involved in administrative matters. And that's made clear to me in the past, and I'll continue with that role as councillor. What can I say? It's disappointing that we are going to end up back in council in February if this motion gets passed, because we're going to be back having to have this whole big discussion again. It's not going to go away. We're eventually just kicking, what we're effectively doing is kicking the can down the road. Well, you know, when you've got big decisions like that, all you've done is kick the can down the road, and you're still going to have to make the decision down the track. That's why originally my idea was let's just have a final plan and have a look at that, and we can do all that work that needs to be done in terms of the consultation and the work towards achieving a plan that seems to work with everybody, rather than you know, coming up with these big concept plans that every time they're put before council, we're one step into what could be a very damaging and difficult position for the council if, in fact, the broader community thinks that this has actually not been a very wise decision.
Thank you. That's your 3 minutes. Right, a reply.
Thank you.
I'm now going to put the motion as amended to the council. Those in favour? I have Councillor Bowman, Councillor Budovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon. It's unanimous other than myself. Thank you, Megan. That completes part C. On to the next part of the meeting is item 2. Thank you. We're now on to part 2 of part C. Notices of motions for consideration at the following meeting if given during this meeting. Councillor Kiley, did you have something handed up earlier?
Given the time, but I might as well have a go. Councillors, my motion, and I put it out on every councillor's table previously, earlier in the night, that the CEO won.
I just need to give intent, Councillor. We don't
that's
have to
all.
read it out. Thank you.
I should just state what it is, Mayor. It's a notice of motion for a Midland Oval Master Plan structure plan revision and structure plan revision.
Thank you. We've now got some confidential items, councillors. I need a motion to go behind closed doors. Move Councillor Parry, seconded Councillor Bowman. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried. And we can make sure the live streaming is turned off. Sorry, my mistake. In relation to item C 3.2, extension of the material commencement date, Lot 4, The Avenue, Council resolved to approve the request for an extension to the material commencement date. Just before we close the meeting, councillors, I'd like to thank you. It's been a long couple of nights. I think good results have been made on behalf of the broader City of Swan community. I thank you for your perseverance. I wish you, on a personal note, to have a very safe and enjoyable Christmas and holiday season with your family. And any time you want to make contact with me to discuss any issue, I'm available on any matter. And hopefully we can work together in a collaborative manner as we go forward into 2022. Thank you, well done, and thanks to staff. Mr. CEO.
Close the meeting. I've just got one quick announcement.
Okay, I'll close the meeting at 10:30.